All right, let's get started on day 11. This file is 226 pages long. Looks like it's probably going to be Olson again. Anchorage, Alaska, Wednesday, May 23rd, 2012, 8:32 a.m. Gerald Olson, direct. Call to order of the court at 8:32 a.m. Jury not present, all parties present. The clerk all rise. His dishonor the court. The United States District Dishonorable Court for the District of Alaska is now in session with the Dishonorable Robert J. Bryan presiding. Please be seated. Good morning. Good morning, Your Honor. Anything preliminary this morning? No, sir. If not, we'll bring the jury in and go to work. Good morning. We're ready to continue. I think, Mr. Scrocky, you may continue. Thank you, Your Honor. Gerald Olson, plaintiff's witness, resumes the stand. Scrocky. Good morning, Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson, yesterday towards the end of the day, we were listening to a recording that you made with Mr. Barney and Mr. Cox out at the Esther cabins. Did you recall that? Yes, I do. There was some discussion about the price of the hand grenades being offered. Yes. During that recording towards the end, there was some conversation about cost and somebody mentioning $200. Yes, and have you the transcript in front of you? Yes, I do. Is there something that you want to point out with respect to the transcript and your hearing of the audio? Answer. The transcript says that Cox made the comment that would be $200 cash, right? And it was actually Mr. Barney. And that's at the transcript page. That would be Exhibit 29-4 at page 23 on the top right hand. Upper right 23. Upper right corner 23. Yeah, 2180 at the bottom. All right. Scrocky, I'm going to play just the last segment there. Mr. Robinson has it queued up. Everybody all set? Not yet. Miss Hayden, I'm sorry, counsel. Which exhibit? Scrocky, 29-04 on the upper right. It's page 23 in the transcript. Scrocky, let's go. Play the audio. Mr. Scrocky. So, Mr. Olson, where it says that'll be 25 or 200 cash right now, yes. What do you think? What do you think you hear? I know I hear Coleman Barney in the background because you can tell Schaefer's close to me. You can hear him real clear. And then Coleman yells from the background, that would be 200 cash, right? We also, at the end of the day, were discussing some phone numbers and some notes. Do you recall that with some exhibits? Yes, okay, yeah, yesterday. If you could give Mr. Olson 468, if we could have that on the screen, please, Sean. Do you recall that note, Mr. Olson? Yes, I do. And then there's a number at the bottom that says 347-7420. Yeah, my secure line. Yeah, all right. Mr. Robinson, can we have 223, page 3? Question. Do you see a number, Mr. Olson, on this yellow pad that came from Mr. Barney's truck on Exhibit 223? Yes, I do. Where do you see it? Next to Schaefer's yellow number there? Yeah, right in there where it says Schaefer's yellow 347-7420. Okay, thank you. I'd like to turn your attention, Mr. Olson, to the early part, March. Affirmative, 2011. And prior to the arrest of the defendants in this case, yes. Do you recall meeting Lonnie and Karen Vernon in Fairbanks? Yes, I do. In early March, yes. Where did you meet them? At Hometown Cafe, a little cafe in South Fairbanks. And how did that meeting between the two of you come to pass, and how did you make it? I don't remember. It was a phone call. I don't remember if Lonnie called me or I called him, but it was on the phone, and they wanted to meet me there. And did you meet with them there? Yes, we did. What did you tell the jury what you discussed when you met with them there? We discussed the whole case that was going on. They were curious about the grenades and the silencers, just the overall, what we were planning. Were there discussions about how to pay for the grenades? Yes, there was. And how was that? What were the discussions about and what method? They didn't really have the cash. They could come up with the cash, but they were interested. They were wondering if I would find out if Bill would be interested in trading some of Karen's jewelry for the grenades, because they said they were not going to need her jewelry and grenades are more important at this point. Was there any discussion about using the grenades with respect to law enforcement? Yes, Lonnie said that with the grenades, he'd be able to take out 2 or 3 5-0s, he called them, which is a term for law enforcement at a time. Okay. And there were phone calls, and did one of the two of you, the Vernons or yourself, receive any phone calls during that time? Yes, Lonnie did. He got a phone call from Coleman, and Coleman wanted him to swing by. I don't remember if it was that evening or the next day, but he wanted Lonnie to stop in and see him. We were talking yesterday about this rifle, the CK-93, yeah. And you mentioned that at one point you and Mr. Cox had traveled to Rob Carr's store. Yeah, how many times did you go there yourself? I went myself, and then a couple of different times. With Schaefer, and Rob wasn't there the first time we went. And you went back again? I went back again with him, yeah. And did you ultimately meet with Mr. Carr? And if you did, who were you with? I was with Schaefer, and yeah, that's the time we got the lower receiver from him. And do you recall if anything was done in connection with the rifle and the lower receiver between the three of you or the two of you while you were at the meeting with Mr. Carr at his shop? Yeah, they both, Rob and Schaefer, both showed me how to redo the post, and then we were talking about yesterday and how to make it fit so the lower receiver would fit the upper receiver. And how long did that take? How long was that discussion? 15 minutes. We weren't there very long, 15 to 20 minutes at the most. When you went to Mr. Carr's store, wherever it was, where was Mr. Carr's store, by the way? It was in the North Pole, on the east side of the North Pole, southeast side, on a frontage road off the Richardson Highway. So it was a real store, yeah. It was a storefront, kind of in a little strip mall setup. There was 2 or 3 stores in the little strip mall, and his was in that. And when you left to go to the store with Mr. Cox, where did you leave from? We left from his store and headed to tried to find Michael Anderson. We went up to his house. I asked you too broad of a question. So before you go to the store, where were you before with? Oh, I'm sorry, at Coleman Barney's house. We went from Coleman Barney's house to the store. Okay. Was there any discussion between or amongst the three of you about going to Mr. Carr's shop? Coleman called up Mr. Carr, Rob, to see if he was there, if he was going to be available. Coleman said, I'm going to be over in a little bit. So you heard him do that? So yeah. So you were talking early March time frame? Yeah, the 3rd, 4th, whatever day, sometime early March, yeah. All right, so you mentioned there in one of your answers that you left Mr. Carr's store with Mr. Cox. Where did you go next? What did you do? From there, we went to find Michael Anderson. Schaefer went up to go to his house to get the list, and so we headed up to Michael Anderson's house. I don't know where it was, so Schaefer showed me how to get up there. How far from North Pole from Mr. Carr's shop was this? It would have been about 25 miles from the shop, so who was driving? I was. Was Mr. Cox in the front seat or the back seat? He was in the front seat. At that point, he had gotten comfortable with to where he was wearing a big, parka with a big hood that came over. He was wearing that in your truck? Yeah, he was, yeah. A hood over his head? Yeah. Once he got up north of Fairbanks, he took off the hood off, but all right, anywhere in town, he put it back on? So you guys went driving around looking for Mike Anderson? Yes, we did. Where did you go first? We went up to his house, right up to his house up in Fox. Was he there? No, he wasn't. Do you know where did you go after that? From there, we went his wife and his mother-in-law, and there she told us that he started a new job at a place down by Joanne's Fabric. So we went there. Initially, we couldn't find the shop, so then Schaefer said, well, I know where he used to work or works sometimes, kind of a part-time deal, I guess. So we went over on Van Horn Road and tried to find him there. He wasn't there. I went in and asked one of the guys in the shop, and then Schaefer said, well, he hangs out with a friend in just north of Fairbanks. So we went back there and knocked on the door, and he wasn't there either. Nobody was there. Did you ever find him that day? No, we didn't. How long did you spend looking for him? Oh, probably 2.5 hours, 3 hours, something like that, because then we couldn't find him. We drove out to Schaefer's house, and he ran in and got a couple of things out of his house. When you were with Mr. Cox in the vehicle, did you discuss Mr. Anderson in any way? Yeah, we did. Yeah, he was telling. What did you talk me about? Tell the jury what you guys talked about. He told me that Michael Anderson, he had known him for quite a while and they were good friends. And I asked him if Michael was a member of the militia, and he said no, he's a complete anarchist. He doesn't want a uniform. And he said that when Schaefer had gotten arrested the first time for his domestic violence stuff, within 30 minutes of him getting arrested, Michael Anderson showed up at his house and took all his illegal stuff and brought it back to Michael's house, stashed it for him. Traverso, objection to the phrase illegal stuff. That is a mischaracterization. The clerk, your microphone, please. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Objection to the phrase illegal stuff. That is a mischaracterization of the testimony that's been presented thus far. My follow-up question would be, Court, well, was that quote from Mr. Cox? The objection is overruled by Mr. Scrocky. Mr. Olson, with respect to the phrase illegal stuff, yeah, who used those words? Schaefer Cox did. That's how he described it. Yeah, it is. Did he mention anything else about Mr. Anderson that you recall? He said that Michael Anderson was like, a total anarchist. He wanted to go out and start killing cops and be a serial killer of cops in the middle of the night. Nobody would know that they were or who was doing it. So you didn't find Mr. Anderson? No, we didn't. Okay, did you yourself ever meet Mike Anderson? No, I never did. If I could have your turn your attention to 30, Exhibit 30.5 or -05. Let's go to 31, Mr. Olson. I didn't note that we had done those yesterday, so 31-1. Can you take a look at that, Mr. Olson? Yes. And is that a recording, a conversation relating to HK semi-automatic machine firearm that we were talking about, the CK93? Yes, it is, yeah. All right, Scrocky, let's go to 31-1, play the audio. Mr. Olson, with respect to 3102, is that a continuation of that conversation? Yes, it is. And how was this, if you recall, how was this recorded? This, the one we were just listened to, was recorded by the telephone device, a telephone recorder. It was a separate recording device that I used when I made phone calls. Okay, so you had that device with you? Yes, I did. So when the phone rang, you could use it? I could, well, or either way, yes, I could, I would. If the phone rang, I'd wait for the call and call right back after I'd turned the device on. All right, audio, play the audio. Before we go to 32, Mr. Olson, do you recall if Mr. Cox, during your time with him, ever spoke of the FBI and Fairbanks, their agents? Yes, he did. In what way? It was always in a bad way, derogatory way. What about, I'm asking you about your specific information about the office or the specific agents? Yes, on that trip, this trip that we took up to Anderson's place, he said there were 2 or 3 FBI agents in Fairbanks and that a friend of his or a fellow patriot was owned the building that FBI rented, and that if he really if Cox really wanted to, he could get a key and get inside the building. I'm going to have to look at 32-01. There was a reference to Mr. Cox saying, I'll talk to a friend that we were looking for the other day. Yes, what's the conversation in relation to? This is relating to Michael Anderson. Okay, play the audio. At 3202 is a further part of the conversation. Then you end the conversation relating to Bill Fulton. Yes, it is. Okay, play the audio. This reference to the person that you were talking to, the trucker. Yes. What was that name? The name that you folks used for him? Han Solo. Okay, so when you heard the name Hans on the radio, yes, I did. It wasn't in the transcript, but it was on the audio, all right. And were you talking to Mr. Cox about plans to leave towards the end of that clip? And at the end, he says, enough, enough, enough. Yes, your impression of what that was about? He didn't want to talk about it on the phone because I was on my regular cell phone. I wasn't on a secured line. Which would have been what color? A red one? Scrocky, play the audio. Sorry about that. This conversation is in reference to what, Mr. Olson? This is in reference to HK-93. Scrocky, go ahead. Play the audio. So Tool was referring to what? The fully automatic HK-93? During your time with Mr. Cox, as we're leading up to March 10th, did you have discussions with him about, did he relay to you what his plans were once he would leave the state? Yes, he did. He wanted to get his family outside, secured down in America someplace, and then he would prefer that all of us got our families out there, and then we would come back to Alaska and do what? And wage guerrilla warfare. Are those his words? Yes, guerrilla warfare. Yes, he said that if our families were safe and the authorities knew that our families were safe, it'd be a big difference to them knowing that we could come after their families and they couldn't do anything to ours. Let me have you flip to 3301. It's a conversation between you and Vernon. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is it at the Hometown Cafe. At a Hometown Cafe, yeah. Play the audio. Mr. Olson, you mentioned that this was at the Hometown Cafe. Is that accurate? Yes, it is. This is not on the telephone? That could be, but we talked about the New Mexico thing at our Hometown Cafe. So, okay, that's your recollection, yes. And 33-2, is that an extension of that conversation? Yes, it is. Play the audio. And 3303 is an extension of that conversation again? Yes, it is. All right, play the audio. Before we get to March 10th, Mr. Olson, just a couple of questions with respect to your vehicle, your personal vehicle. Yes. What kind of vehicle was it? It was a Ford F-150 crew cab. Did you permit the FBI to do anything with respect to your truck per the investigation? Yes, I did. Yeah, they wired it up and put recorders in it, video and audio. Do you know how many different places? I do now, but at the time I didn't. All right. And what else were you given in preparation for the March 10th? All right, let's keep going. A body recorder and then also a body video camera. If you could relay the jury what the plan was that you worked out or were you told was that had been worked out by the FBI for the eventual arrest of Mr. Barney, Mr. Cox, and Mr. Vernon. The whole plan, like a summary of the whole thing. Yes, as you understand it. Okay, we were going to meet up with, they didn't want them all 4 at the same time, so we were going to do 2 and 2, Lonnie and Karen, and they were going to get arrested, and then I was going to go back and meet up with Coleman and Schaefer and bring them to the takedown spot, and then they were going to get arrested too. So, okay, so the plan was to have 2 separate arrests. Yes, it was. All right, let me have you move it to Exhibit 34. This is a conversation between yourself and Miss Vernon, correct? Yes, it is, yeah. And do you recall roughly when this conversation occurred? This would have been the night before the takedown. All right, Scrocky, go ahead, play the audio. Mr. Olson, you mentioned the word tools to Miss Vernon, yes. And can you tell the jury, in a sense, Miss Vernon's participation or association with your conversations with Lonnie about the silences you were going to go and get? She understood clearly what the tools that we were talking about, the grenades and silencers, and she clearly understood that. Well, I want to give us some facts about why she understood it. Was she present when these conversations were taking place, and they need some detail? Oh yes, she was a couple of days before at the hometown cafe, and then when they wanted to pay me the time, trade, and jewelry, she was in that conversation. I told them, no, don't pay me yet. We'll wait until we get it, because I wanted to have the money taken with the transaction and no trade at that point. So she was very well aware of what was going on. Miss Scrocky, Exhibit 36, play the audio. This is a call between you and Mr. Olson, Mr. Barney, and what's it dealing with? Dealing with meeting in the morning to buy the grenades and silencers, setting up a time. Scrocky, play the audio. So Mr. Olson, what would be the date of the phone call with Mr. Barney? I don't know the exact date, but right before the takedown. Was that March the 10th? Okay, so are you conversing with the Vernons as well during the time frame right before the arrest? Yes. I talked to them. The last one we heard talk to Karen was the night before. Okay, let's flip to 36, please. This is between you and Mr. Vernon. Yes, it is. Play the audio. Oh, Mr. Olson, Exhibit 37, if you could look at the first page of that transcript. Yeah, it's a call with Mr. Cox. Yes, it is. What's it concerning? It concerns meeting up and picking up the grenades and silencers. What date was this call made? This would have been done the date of the takedown with respect to the morning's plan for your departure. Did that go off as time? No, it didn't. Did you want to tell the jury why? I was staying at a motel. The FBI had me in a motel at this point, and it was probably 25 to 30 below that morning, and they had my truck for a couple of days before getting it wired up. And when I brought it back over to the motel, there was something wrong with one of the cords for the plug in the motel, and I went out to start my truck in the morning, and it wouldn't start. It hadn't been plugged in right. Okay, so we had a major delay, kind of a mad scramble. Yeah, it was. We had to get it plugged in, obviously, but it was going to take a while. So the troopers were able to bring over a space heater and get some heat on it. So after 45 minutes or an hour, we finally got it going. Okay, so you placed a call with Mr. Cox. We'll hear in a minute. Do you actually get to meet with Bill Fulton this morning? Yes, I did. Where at? I don't remember the name of the motel, but at a motel room, up in his motel room. Okay, and there was a transaction between the two of you in that motel room? Yeah, there was. I went in and picked him up. I didn't have the cash. He was upset. He was expecting me to bring cash, and the FBI had told me I wasn't going to have cash. We needed to see the product first. Talk to him into letting you take the grenades and silencers with you, and then come back and pay him. Bill was upset that I didn't bring the cash with me to pay him. What's going on here? We got J.R. Olson buying stuff from Bill Fulton, and they're both government informants. Okay, one thing at a time. Okay, so you didn't know that Mr. Fulton was working for the FBI too? No, I didn't. And so he didn't know, to your knowledge, he didn't know you were working for the FBI. As far as I know, he didn't at the time. So you stiffed him? I wasn't going to go back and pay him. Well, in my mind, I thought he was going down too for selling illegal weapons. So, I'm sorry, going down? Well, going to get arrested. Affirmative. I thought I was setting him up as well. Okay, all right, but you got the items from Mr. Fulton? Yeah, I did, yeah. Tell the jury what you got. I got 2 pistols with silencers and a backpack full of hand grenades. Okay, how many? I'm sorry, how many pistol silencer combinations did you get? 2, yes, or 4, I guess. I guess it was 4. Do you remember, Mr. Olson? I don't remember for sure, because I think I don't remember if we used to get the ones 2 in takedown, or if there were actually 4. Oh, is this where your confusion is? That's where my confusion is there, yeah. Okay, because they could have been using different one of set of arrest or the other arrest, yeah. All right, I don't remember if I walked out there because we walked both out, but it seems I don't remember. Okay, well, more than once, yes, oh yes. There was more than one. All right, Scrocky, play the audio. Mr. Olson, in terms of timing with respect to the Vernon's arrest, when was this call made? It would have been about 10:30 in the morning. Okay, before or after the arrest, if you recall. If you don't recall that, I don't recall. Okay, for sure I assume it was that before the arrest. Mr. Cox used the phrase canned good and produce. Yeah, you interpreted that to mean what? Grenades and silencers. Who was arrested first, Lonnie and Vernon? Where did you meet them before they were arrested? In a trucking yard in an industrial part of the Fairbanks, back in warehouse area? Okay, and was this a place where they were ultimately arrested at? Yes, it is. Did they drive their own vehicle there? Yeah, they did. We're going to turn to Exhibit 40-40-1, and before we start that, you reviewed this, Mr. Olson? Yes, I have. Okay, and is it audio video of the arrest of Mr. and Miss Vernon? Yes, it is. And your sale to them of what items? The silencers and pistol combinations and then the hand grenades. Okay, Scrocky, go ahead and play the audio. What are you doing now, Mr. Olson? I'm walking up to pick up the containers with the guns and silencers and the backpacks with the grenades. So Mr. Vernon was up on the upper left, in the upper left screen of the upper left. Yes, he is. And the right-hand side is Karen. You can see her behind him there. And that's your vehicle you're approaching. Yes, it is. Play the audio. The Vernons were arrested. Yes, they were. You rolled out of the truck. Yes, I did. Before we go further in your day, Mr. Olson, I got a couple of more things to go over with you. When you were offered $750, yes. Where did you get the money for that from? Who gave you the money? Oh, Lonnie or Karen did. Okay, and then Lonnie had to come up with $10, yeah, to make the full amount. Okay, where did the grenades that they had just purchased go? Where were they placed? Karen put them in her purse. Okay, you had some conversation with them right up at the end about going to a certain place. What was that about? That was about, I believe, I don't know for sure, but it was someone they had with targeting his house, a judge or some other law enforcement agent of some kind. Do you know what the address was, 751? I mean, do you know the physical address? Do you have any independent knowledge of what it was? I did at the time, I remember, because they had given me the address in one of those previous meetings. I never drove by it, but I knew where it was. Yeah, all right, the area, you know. All right, Scrocky, do we have 103? If you could open that up, Mr. Olson, Scrocky. Can we have the lights down, Ollie? Do you see that item there, Mr. Olson? Yes, I do. Was that equate to the cash that you received from the Vernons that morning? Yes, it does. Scrocky, offer 103. I think 103 is already in evidence. Okay. All right. How much money is in that envelope? I can't tell for sure here. They all stuck together. The hundreds are. Oh, they're in hundreds. There are some hundreds. Yeah, the receipt there says 750. Okay. If that means anything. Can we have 102, 73, 74? Do you recognize Exhibit 73, Mr. Olson? Yeah, I do. And the item you used during the arrest of Lonnie and Karen Vernon? Yes, it was. The grenades were in offer 73. It's already in evidence. All right, thank you. Our records don't have 73 in it. Well, 73 may be admitted. You're right. I was looking at the wrong line. It's in evidence. Thank you. Scrocky, that's the backpack you carried with the grenades in it? Yeah, they're sitting over there in the snowbank. Yeah. And the box there to the left, Exhibit 74, would you pull one of those items out, or you one of the grenades? If you open up the can, you can, yes. Would that be one of the grenades that you handed Mr. Olson, Mr. Vernon? Yes, it is. You can put the pack in the box. You can put that back in the box. Okay, I don't believe there's a black case to your left. Exhibit 102. Yes, it is. Just pop the lid open for us. Do you want me to take it out? What do you see in there? It's a gun with a silencer. Okay, similar to the one that you sold Mr. Vernon. Yes, it is. You put it back in the case, please, and lock it up. If you could have the lights, madam. Sean, if you could pull up 323, and we'll just go to Exhibit 329. Oh, Mr. Olson, I'm going to run through some photos here. I don't want you to talk about what I don't want you to talk about what you're seeing. Just answer my questions before we get them. If we get them admitted, all right. Okay. Did you have occasion to review the various video recordings of the activities of Mr. and Miss Vernon in your vehicle on March 10th? Yes, I have. And these series of photos are screenshots of screen captures from those videos? Yeah, they are. So 323 is Mr. Vernon? Yeah. Let's go to 324. That's Mr. Vernon again. Yeah. 325. That's a screen capture of Karen Vernon. Yeah. 326. Another capture of Karen Vernon. Yeah. And Lonnie on the left there. 327. That's a photo of Mr. Vernon in your front seat. Yeah. And 328. A different shot of Mr. Vernon in the front seat. Yeah. And 329 again. Mr. Vernon in the front seat. Yeah. Those were all captures off the videotape. Yeah, they are. Your Honor, no objection. Admitted, no objection. Okay, Mr. Olson. There's a screen capture of Lonnie Vernon. Yes, it is. And you see an item there on the bottom left-hand corner of the frame? Yeah, I do. What is that? That's the end of the silencer where the bullet comes out of the hole there. 324, the screen depicts Mr. Olson, the guns. I just handled a pistol and silencer on the end of it. Who's holding it? Mr. Vernon. 325, right-hand corner of the frame. Who is that person there? That's Karen Vernon. 326, and Karen on the right. Karen Vernon and Lonnie on the left. You can see the top of his head with a yellow hat, yellow and black hat. Let's go to 327. This is a photo of Mr. Vernon, his torso, yeah. What does he have in his hand? He's got his wallet in his hand. On the right-hand side, what's depicted there? That is his money. It looks like a $10 bill. And 328, that's Mr. Vernon. Mr. Vernon again has a wallet in his hand, 329. Mr. Vernon again like a grenade, again with a grenade like the one I just had in his hand. And you can see a lid from another one right down there at the bottom. There's a lid there, right there, yeah. Over here is the lid from that one, yeah. Scrocky, if we could have the lights in, Ollie. So, Mr. Olson, you bailed out of the truck. Yeah, I did. You hit the snow. Yes, I hit the ground. And was that part of the discussion with the FBI about what you were supposed to do during the Vernon's arrest? Yeah. They wanted me to bail out, and I was going to get arrested as well, you know, cuffed, and not like I was getting taken down. Did that happen? Yeah. Where were you placed? In a car with an FBI agent? And from there, what happened next? I sat in there in the car with her until Lonnie and Karen drove by, and they took me out and took the cuffs off me, and we regrouped for the next one. And did you place a phone call before that happened? Yeah, I did. Is that the call we heard earlier this morning? Yeah, it is. Do you arrange a place to meet with Mr. Cox and Mr. Barney after the Vernon's arrest? Yes, we did. Where was that? At the Fred Meyer parking lot. Okay. Scrocky, if we could have the lights Denali 448 for Mr. Olson, do you recognize the aerial view of that building there? Yeah, I do. What is it? That's the Fred Meyer on the Airport Way in Fairbanks. Okay, offer 448, no objection. Maybe admitted. So, Mr. Olson, where did you meet with Mr. Cox and Mr. Vernon? If you can see the big white roof, that's the roof of the Fred Meyer right there. Yes, up around the 1 o'clock up in the right-hand corner of the parking lot, right in there. Yeah, in the area of your line, right in there. Yeah. What building is in there? That's the Mount McKinley Bank building. Mr. McKinley Bank. Yeah. So you were here. Freddie's is first, and Bank is there. Yeah, correct. And what's there where you meet up with Mr. Cox and Mr. Barney? Yeah. And so from there, where did you go? From there, we drove over to the industrial area where the takedown was over the Turner Street, I believe the name of it is. If we could have, at the parking lot, did you observe anything in connection with a pickup truck, Mr. Barney's truck? It was a black Dodge, his black Dodge. That I had seen before with a load of firewood in the back. Okay, nothing on the hitch, not that I recall specifically. Did you know that Mr. Barney had a trailer, a towable trailer? Yeah, I do. How do you know that? Because at some point when I was out at Coleman's place, Schaefer and I went out into the white enclosed trailer because they had stuff stored in there. When this white enclosed trailer, what kind of stuff was stored in it? It had all of Schaefer's stuff that he was getting ready to move out, and then up in the front there was some shells and tools, electrical tools for Barney business. And so you and Mr. Cox were in the trailer? Yeah, we were. And how long were you in there? Not very long, 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. What was the point of him going into the trailer? We went to get something, and I don't remember what it was for sure where we went to get in there to get. Okay, but on this morning here, you didn't see the trailer in association with the pickup truck? No, I didn't. Okay, for this, we have 3 clips, so we're going to go to 38-1. Mr. Olson, does the clip begin in the Fred Meyer parking lot? Yes, it does. All right, Scrocky, go ahead and play the audio. Mr. Olson, who's in the back seat? That's Schaefer. At the front seat, Coleman. Watch Mr. Coleman's hands, Mr. Olson. Do you see him put something in the front seat? Yeah. And you're coming back with what? I'm coming back with the grenades and silencers and pistols. Play the audio. Before we play that, the next clip, there's a lot of discussion about the 22 calibers. Yeah, quotes about devastating things like that. Yeah, there was. And in your impression, were they talking about killing people with a 22 versus a 9mm that we had ordered? When you mentioned the grenades, did you observe while you were driving any expression or surprise on Barney's face? No, there was a comment by Mr. Barney about in response to Mr. Cox's silencer that it was pretty quiet. Yes, were you ever present when the two of them were shooting Mr. Cox's silencer or silenced pistol? No, I wasn't present. Okay, Mr. Scrocky, previously attached, video recording into video. Mr. Olson, you brought two pistol cases back to the truck. Yes, I did. Where did one of them go? One went back to Schaefer and one to Coleman. You brought some grenades back to the truck. Yes. Where did they go when you put them in? I handed to a couple, or one to Coleman and then one back to Schaefer. At some point, there's another individual going back to drive up your passenger side window. Yes, there is. We're going to see that in a couple of seconds. Yes, okay. Play the audio. Is that when you had a grenade? Is that when you hand a grenade back? Yeah. Play the audio video. What's Mr. Barney doing with the silencer? He's stashing it down by the seat. Play the audio video. Any idea who that gentleman was? I had no idea. No. Mr. Barney and Mr. Cox were arrested. Yes. A couple of photos. Mr. Olson, Scrocky, if we could pull up the identification. 68, 69, 70. Are those excerpts from the video recording you just saw? Yes. For that one there? Yes, it is. 69, the same as that one? Yes. And 70? Scrocky, no objection, no objection, no objection. Wait a minute. 68 may be admitted. 69 may be admitted. Mr. Olson, yes, the individual here, who is that? That's Schaefer Cox. Is that the hoodie you mentioned that he was wearing before? Yes, it is. He wore that all the time. There's something in there that I circled there in blue. Do you see that? In the blue circle, all I see is white. Yeah, you see the white there? Yeah, let's go to 69, please. Is that Mr. Cox sitting in the back seat? Yeah, it is. What's he doing with his hand? Reaching, it looks like he's reaching up. And is there, before you brought back the grenades and the silencers? I don't know for sure. Scrocky 70. I can't tell you just by that one picture, 70. What do you see there that I've circled? Mr. Cox's hand again? Okay, what color is his hand? Brown, whitish, kind of brownish, greenish. Well, Mr. Olson, what color is his hand? Can you tell what color? It looks kind of greenish to me, you know. Okay, skin color? All right. Can you pull up 85, please? Do you recognize the location that was depicted on the photograph, Mr. Olson? Yes, I do. And what's that? The container holding one of the grenades and then the Pelican case where the gun and silencers were set in. Is that your vehicle? Yes, it is. 86. Is that the back of your vehicle as well? Yeah, no, that's the front seat. The passenger side where Coleman was sitting, okay. And what's that? The 22 silenced pistol? Yes, it is. 87. What part of your vehicle is that? That's the back seat there. And what do you see there in the center, the silenced gun, Scrocky? Is that a screen capture from the video, Mr. Olson? Yes, it is. And what is that showing? It shows a hand grabbing of a hand grenade. And whose hand is that? That would be my hand, I believe. I don't know 1,000%, but I think it's my hand. Scrocky92. Is that a screen capture? Yes, it is. That's my hand. I'm handing the grenade, either swinging it back to Coleman or to Schaefer, or over to Coleman. Do you want to go to 9394 for identification? Without going into the contents, Mr. Olson, those screen capture will be further the transfer. Yes, it is. 94, please. The same one. 2, yes. Mr. Scrocky, offer 93 and 94. We're going to stop on page 51 here. Okay, continuing on with page 51. Offer 93 and 94, no objection, and it's about time for a break. All right, we'll take 10. You may be excused. How long, Judge? 10 minutes? 10 minutes. This matter stands in recess for 10 minutes. All rise. His dishonor the court. This United States dishonorable court is again in session. Please be seated. I have a matter. Yeah, Your Honor. We have been about 5 more. We have met about maybe 5 more minutes with Mr. Olson before cross. Last night we received some exhibits from Mr. Dooley related to cross-examination material. I have a copy of those here. What consist of primarily are default judgments, which in our view are not appropriate to go into cross-examination under 608B. They're unadjudicated, and they are, if you want to look at them, I'll bring them up to you for you to examine, but I'll let you look at the rule. And these are all civil in nature. The court, well, how far to go into this is a little hard to tell. You opened the door substantially with your direct and sort of took it out of the strict limits of Rule 608, and I don't know the questions are going to be, what answers are going to be given. A bunch of default judgments as exhibits are probably not appropriate, but inquiring into those things you asked about them, and the defense can ask about them. Scrocky, and as we should have, we didn't think about it. We didn't think it opens the door to an inquiry into the details of the underlying of all those offenses. The mere fact, well, that the offenses have been mentioned provides plenty of ammunition for cross-examination of this. Well, individual before the jury, I can't rule in advance of something I haven't heard yet, so would you like to see the exhibits? No, if when they're identified and when they're offered, if and when there's an objection, I'll look at them and deal with that objection. My reaction is that they're probably not appropriate exhibits. My other reaction is that the inquiry into this subject matter is probably appropriate because it was open on direct. That's where I am. Scrocky, okay. Affirmative. Yeah, Mr. Traverso, Your Honor, maybe this is not the timely, but I thought we'd do it while there's a break. During their opening, they also stated, and they've done it through the whole direct. It is that Mr. Olson belongs to a criminal organization. I filed a motion in limine or argued about this before, that I might raise the issue of him being part of Hell's Angels, and that was associated with his drug dealing. And during this audio yesterday, he talked about his biker days, and I believe that I may reference Hell's Angels in my cross-examination. That's not a prior bad act. Mr. Scrocky, we filed our motion in limine. You've already ruled on that issue. They can infer from it what they wish, but the fact that he was running for the Hell's Angels is not relevant. He admitted to the conduct. With who it could have been anybody. It does not further the goals here under the Sixth Amendment. Mr. Scrocky, Your Honor, the motion that we filed under seal, there's also certain aspects of retribution that we're concerned about concerning his family. That was part of our reason to not go into that area. The court, well, we're going to go back here 3 weeks, and I don't have a clear recollection of exactly what my ruling was, to tell you the truth, but I answered this ruling stands. I think the organization should not be mentioned by name. Traverso, that's not what you ruled, Your Honor. Well, what did I rule? Tell me what I ruled. And you said you would revisit this trial, and that I argued that it wasn't prior bad act, even though the government was saying 404B, it wasn't allowable. And I said it's not a prior bad act. It's a name of the organization. I think the jury ought to be able to tie in what organization they substantially went into his criminal record, everything about it. If they were concerned about possible retribution, if that's what they were saying, they would not have opened the door. Scrocky, that's ridiculous. We had to open the door because we're letting the jury know of this individual's background. Now, to use this as a bootstrap to identify the organization is not reason to put his family in possible peril. These people, the court, well, Scrocky, don't look at this type of topic very favorably. Just hold on a second, okay? The court, I don't think I specifically ruled on this in regard to the motion in limine. The answer to this is that I think again that it was opened up on direct and they can inquire as to the nature of the criminal organization that he served. Yeah, I know you don't like it, but that's what I see, okay? I'll save my breath. All right, bring the jury in. I understand Mr. Verso wanted a break also before cross. A very short one, Your Honor. All right, you may continue, Mr. Scrocky. Yes, Your Honor. If we could have 93 up and all lights Denali. Mr. Olson, I'm not sure if we published this before the break. We're just trying to cover the base. That's a video capture. Yes, it is. From the arrest of Mr. Barney and Mr. Cox, yeah. And what are you doing there? Handing a grenade to Coleman. They're further into the sequence. Yeah, that's Coleman. Who's handing the grenade there? Coleman is. Thank you. I'm going to show you Mr. Olson Exhibit 96 for identification. Do you recognize the individual in that picture? Yes, I do. And that's from, again, the video that was just shown to the jury. Yes, it is. And Mr. Barney's depicted in that photo. Yes. Offer 96. No objection. Mr. Olson, this is the photo of who? Coleman Barney. And what's he holding in his hand? The silencer and the gun. Scrocky, if we could have the lights Denali. Mr. Olson, after this was done, what do you have occasion to testify in front of a court proceeding after the arrest of Mr. Vernon Cox and Barney? Yes, I did. What proceeding was that? The grand jury for the state, yes. And you testified for them? Yes, I did. And additionally, after this occurred, was there something occurring in relation to the felony charges of the theft of the Bobcat? Yeah, there was. What was done? The sentencing? Okay, and the individuals from the state of Alaska, the federal government, contribute to that sentencing proceeding? Yes, they did. Do you recall who that would have been? It was Special Agent Sutherland and the prosecutor from Fairbanks. Okay, the DA? All right, and in relation to your cooperation, were you required to tell law enforcement all the criminal acts that you have conducted in the course of your life? Yes, I did. Your adult life? Yes, I wasn't required. I just did that. You did that? I told them everything, yes. And you told them that about your drug use? Yes. You told them about your transporting drugs? Yes. And who were you transporting drugs for on those two occasions you talked about? It was Hell's Angels or Bible Club gang. Okay, so you told that to the law enforcement? Yes, I did. And with respect to your sentencing for the theft of the Bobcat, your actions with respect to the arrest here were taken into account? Yeah, they were. And it factored into your sentence? Yeah, it was. Throughout the course of your work on this investigation, Mr. Olson, yes. Were you ever told that you had not performed as directed? No, I wasn't. Wasn't told that by anybody? No, not by anybody. Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Olson. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take another break before we start cross. Hopefully it won't be very long, but you can be excused for an unscheduled break. All rise. This matter stands a brief recess. Let us know you're ready to proceed. Counsel, Traversal, thank you. Recess. All rise. His dishonorable, the United States dishonorable court is again in session. Please be seated. The scope of cross under 611B is limited to the subject matter of direct examination and matters affecting the credibility of the witness. So you've got two prongs there. And so when something is open on direct, the cross comes under the first prong of the rule, but not necessarily second. It may also come under the second prong. That's my view that we're discussing. You can bring the jury in. Your Honor, when the jury comes in, if we could collect the binders from them. Oh, well. Are there any defendants going to play? We're going to need the court. We're going to play any of these. We might be playing one exhibit out of there. Okay, I won't need the governments, I don't think. We'll just leave them there for present. All right, Mr. Traverso, you may examine. Thank you, Your Honor. Cross-examination. By Mr. Traverso. Good morning, Mr. Olson. Good morning. Yesterday I heard, there was a lot of testimony yesterday about a criminal organization that you belong to, that you did drug trafficking with. Is that correct? Yes. And we heard repeated reference to criminal organization, right? Yes. Is that the Hells Angels, or is that the Hells Angels plus another organization that was Hells Angels? That was the Hells Angels organization. Okay. And how long did you belong to the Hells Angels? I never belonged to them. You were working for them, but you didn't belong to them. That's correct. And you also, in your testimony yesterday, discussed being associated with Freeman of Montana. Yeah. And that is an organization that is Aryan roots. In other words, they are very, 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 very racist. Is that correct? Not that I'm aware of. You're not aware of that? Okay. No. Are you aware that they believe in the overthrow of the government? I'm not aware of that either. You're not aware of that either? No. How old were you when you were part of that organization? 16, 17 years old. Were you an actual member of the Freemen, or were you just a fan of the Freemen? I wasn't a member by any means. I was more of a fan, yeah. So you weren't really a member of the Hells Angels, and you weren't really a member of the Freemen, but you mentioned both of them in your testimony yesterday, correct? These two organizations impacted your life to the nut, yeah. Okay, and to such an extent that you're talking about the Hells Angels, you were drug trafficking. You were going from, it was Washington to Alaska, yeah. And you would have to go, did you have to go across the Canadian border? Yeah. And there was some gentlemen that you were able to influence so that you could make the cross easily, right? Yes. Okay, you have the ability, would you say, to be persuasive, correct? I don't view myself that way, but You don't. Okay. Well, you had your felony case back in December of 2005. That was a theft case, right? Yeah. You received it. What was it for? Like I stated the other day, I rented a Bobcat and didn't return it. Okay, that was in 2005, but in 2009 or actually 2011, you got convicted of another theft-related offense and deceptive business practices, correct? No, that's not correct. Okay, well, tell me what you got convicted of in 2011. 2011 was a Bobcat case. Okay, well, then it started in 2009. We didn't, okay, when I said December the 9th, Scrocky, I'm sorry, his answer wasn't quite finished yet. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I forget what I was saying. Well, let's go back. When was your theft in the second degree conviction in 2005, correct? Yeah, it was. Okay, and when you mentioned earlier that you were able to work out something with the government, correct? Yeah, I was. When did you tell either Mr. Scrocky or someone associated with the federal government that you had not paid taxes since 1999? I told them at the beginning of this 2010, yeah. Okay, did you inform the court when you were in your state proceedings regarding that aspect of your life? What do you mean? About the fact that you had not paid taxes of any forms that you filled out. I don't recall either way. Well, back then in 2005, did you have an appointed attorney or did you have someone that was privately representing you? I started out with an appointed attorney and then I got a private attorney. Okay. And when did the appointed attorney paperwork, did you explain that you didn't have any resources? That's been a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly, I think. Okay, I listened what I had. All right, but you got in December 2009, 2005, July 22nd, 2011, the state filed numerous probation violations based on the criminal activity, correct? No, it was just one probation violation when I got the new charges in 2009. But there were 10 probation violations, and then they adjudicated it all into one. If that's the way it works, I'm not familiar with the way it works. Okay. That's the way it works. You're not familiar with how it works? No, I'm not. Okay, on July the 22nd, 2011, you had a SIS, and then there was a 10 years, correct? A suspended imposition of sentence for 10 years, yes. And so we can make clear for the jury in 2005, you received a suspended imposition of sentence as well, correct? That's correct, yeah. And the great feature of this is that the conviction gets set aside, correct? Yeah, I understand it. Yeah, okay, and then you got that again in 2011, correct? Okay. And the district attorney from Fairbanks was behind you, Mr. Sutherland, or the FBI was behind you, and then the court was behind you, correct? I don't know about the court, but the district attorney and the FBI was. Okay, but for sure, the court didn't reject the offer. They did the plea agreement. No, they didn't. Okay, now, did the drug trafficking for a long time, and you were not a member, but you were somehow working for the Hells Angels, and you were also associated with the Freemen of Montana? That's pretty dangerous, life-threatening type work, isn't it? Yes, it is. And there are multiple situations, would you agree, where you had to talk yourself out of those situations to avoid getting hurt? I can't remember multiple. Well, occasions, no. You would take precautions, wouldn't you? Yes. Okay, did you or did you not persuade a border patrol person that you needed to cross the state lines or the border so that you could haul your load, right? No, I did not persuade him. You did not persuade him? What did you do? I paid him. He was actually persuaded by someone else long before me. Oh, okay, so you were informed that there was a network that had taken care of this. Oh, correct? You're right. Now, you were hauling groceries along with the drugs, correct? Yes. But the person that was using you for the transportation of groceries had no idea about the drugs, correct? That's correct, yeah. I mean, he wasn't part of any payoff, was he? No. Or she, no. Okay, now, when you were working with the FBI on this case, when you became interested in this case and you were informed you were going to investigate, did you learn that Mr. Cox was a Hells Angels? No. Or some kind of thief? No. Drug trafficking? No. How about Mr. Barney here? No. How about Mr. Vernon? No. Okay, in fact, all three of them belonged to an organization that was called the Alaska Peacemaker Militia, and many times, as we heard on the audio, they're family militia, correct? That's what they put out there to the public. Well, you went to the barbecue on August 10th, did you not? Yes. And it was open, was it not? Yes. Family and children were there, and other people were there interested in becoming a member of the militia were there? Yeah, correct. Okay, that was in 2010, correct? Yeah, the summer of 2010, August. What information had you received from the federal government that Mr. Cox, Barney, and Vernon were interested in using grenades to blow up people? At that point? Yeah. I had received no information about that. You didn't receive any information about that, did you? Inaudible reply. Now, it was also the motto or the thing that was referred to the manual that looked at, and their emphasis was on defend all, aggress none, correct? Yes. Okay, now, were you aware of any of the information from the FBI or anyone else in the federal government that either Mr. Cox, Mr. Barney, or Mr. Vernon had engaged in any criminal activity? that you needed to be involved in as an informant? No, I wasn't. Okay. At that time, when you started to work with the federal government, your job was to get these illegal weapons in their hands, correct? No, that's incorrect. Okay, what was it? To join up and see what was going on, just to see what was going on, so they hadn't been involved in any activity, but you all you wanted to see was what was going on, correct? No illegal activity that I was aware of at the time I joined up. Okay, well, you were getting briefed and debriefed and were involved in the federal government pretty extensively, correct? Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I was getting debriefed on my particular actions for that day. I was not aware of what else was going on in their investigation. Okay, but you had a mission, did you not? Scrocky, objection, it's vague. He may answer. Traverso, the mission was to observe? To observe. To become a member? Okay, so from July to February you observed, correct? Yes, nothing, absolutely nothing was criminal between July and February, or August or February. Scrocky calls for legal conclusion. Traverso, anything that he observed, Your Honor? He may answer, Mr. Traverso, I don't recall for sure. You don't, there may have been a few. Okay, times of talk of machine guns and fully automatic, all right. But I don't recall a specific instance. I mean, you would know a criminal activity. I mean, you were involved in the Hells Angels. You were drug trafficking and you were convicted on theft of a couple of occasions, and you would know if something was out of place, right? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, okay, so was it the mission of did the federal government ever talk to you about trying to get the people in the militia, that is Mr. Cox, Barney, and Vernon, to get engaged in some sort of confrontation with the government? Were they trying to promote that with you? No, in fact, they told me not to do that. Not to instigate? Yes. But you did, though, didn't you? No, I didn't. You didn't. Okay. Traverso. Counsel, it is off the recording of D11021-911. Scrocky, you're going to have to slow down. Traverso, I'm sorry. Go ahead. D11021-911 underscore CHS underscore Cox underscore Vernon underscore Barney 85816. Hold on. 85816. And it begins with a time counter. Who are the speakers? Traverso, Mr. Olson, Mr. Cox, and the rest of the militia. Is there a page number on the transcript, Nelson? I don't have a page number. I just have the audio recording as it was given to me. Traverso, I'm not getting any audio, Your Honor. We tried it out last night at work, so if I could have just a brief moment to get the cord. Yeah, tech person, see what's up. I need to get the tech person here, Your Honor. I'm not sure why it isn't working. Are you sure you have selected the correct user? Can I see the remote, please? Thank you. Play the audio. Played. Audio server. Mr. Traverso, you asked, did you not, on February 19th, at that point, does 2-for-1 kick in, right? Yes, I did. Was that something the government wanted you to ask of these young men? No, not that specific question. They wanted to know who the targets were going to be, and when soon something like this was going to happen, okay? Pardon my interruption, but the exhibit was just played. But what exhibit was just played? That is, it's D11021-911. I can write it out for you afterwards. It's a long one. The clerk, I just need an exhibit number. That was your exhibit. Traverso, yes. Or the government's exhibit. Yes. Defense exhibit. 2 then. Yes. Defendant's exhibit FSC 2 identified. FSC 2, thank you. By Mr. Traverso. Now that wasn't the only time you also tried to get them to instigate 2-for-1, right? Yeah. Do you remember any other times? Yeah, there were a couple of other times. Do you remember saying to these gentlemen back again later on that you said it was, I'm not as gifted as maybe you are, Mr. Cox, but you started off talking like that. Do you remember that? I remember we just listened to it yesterday or the day before, but yes, I remember. Do you remember the whole conversation? No, I don't recall the whole conversation, the context of it. Play the audio, Scrocky. Sorry, counsel, where are we? This is the same CD that I mentioned to you before, all right, but it begins at 3:15:10 on the counter, ends at 3:15:47 on the counter. What? As provided in discovery. So this is, what page is that on the transcript? We're going by the audio, Mr. Olson. Well, so is this still 2. This will be 3. Thank you. I'd like to see the transcript, or know it's in the transcript so I can follow along with it. Your Honor, we have an objection with respect to the clips. What he has for Mr. Olson is fine. When it goes into statements of the defendants, it's inadmissible. Hearsay. It's not admissible of a party opponent that belongs to the government side. That's how the rule works. But as far as Mr. Cox or the other defendants speaking, it's inadmissible. I gather this was from an exhibit that's already in evidence. No, sir, it's not. Well then, I mean, some of them might be, but the first one was not. Well, we're getting this kind of bogged down here, obviously, with the technology, so that is a fair objection. Anything that comes in has to be identified, marked and identified, and we're determined whether it can be shown or played to the jury, so you know if traversal, all right. Court, you've got something that's not already in evidence, and we've got to go through the evidence dance to be sure it's relevant and reliable. Could we have just a minute on that? Your Honor, we don't think it's necessary for any of the defense to go through a foundation with what Mr. Olson said through the course of the investigation. So we're okay with them presenting that. We just need advance notice about the clip they're going to get, like Mr. Traversal's giving us. But we would ask if he's got control of the keyboard and the mouse, that when it gets to a defendant's words, that the statement stop in light of your ruling. The court, if it's new stuff, the jury needs to know who's talking when it was said, and it needs to be admitted, right? And if it's not new stuff, then if it's already evidence, then when you don't have to do that, what you just told me may not object to some of this, but it still has to be identified. Yes, sir, and marked and identified. Traversal, this is the same recording that I received from the government, and it is at the 3:15:10 mark that was given to me earlier in the summer of 2011. This is at the February 19th meeting, and it is D11-21911 CHS Cox, Vernon Barney. And I apologize, this is still 3, or is it the new exhibit? This is the same one that we were talking about earlier. The clerk, thank you very much. Play the audio. Do you remember saying that, Mr. Olson? Yes, I do. Okay, you were at that point also trying to instigate some sort of confrontation, correct? No, I wasn't. You weren't trying to not instigate. You weren't trying to promote 2-for-1, which is some sort of plan to execute people. I was definitely not trying to promote that. I was against that. I was trying to get information on 2-for-1. Okay, that was on February 19th, right? If that's the date of that recording, then yes, I know it was time in February. And then when you were in court yesterday, you said the first time you brought up 2-for-1 was February 12th at the meeting at Ken Thessing's bus, correct? I don't recall the dates of this whole thing. Things were happening so fast I may have miscorrectly stated a date, but if that's the date, then I did. But okay, well, let's go. I can't remember exact dates all the time. Well, like I said, there was so much going on. Well, let me see if I can help you with that. Let's talk about some of those dates. It might be helpful. February 4th, 2010, February 4th, 2011. The dates are tough, I know. Side conversing. Yeah, this is the time that you went to Mr. Cox's house with Mr. Vernon before you left Anchorage for a militia convention, which has to be held the next day, correct? Okay, yes. So the militia convention was on February the 5th. You go to Mr. Cox's house on February the 4th, right? If those are the dates, yes. Well, do you remember when? It was the day before. Do you remember when he answered the door? He was tired. They just delivered a baby, and you guys started talking in soft voices, not to wake the baby up. Do you remember that? Yep. Okay, those 2 conversations were recorded, correct? Yeah, they were. Okay, Mr. Cox made it very clear to you not to go to the Anchorage and associate with Mr. Bennett, and when Mr. Fulton was drunk, to stay away from him, correct? Objection calls, it's hearsay. It was part of the testimony yesterday, Your Honor. Well, but he's actually testifying for the defendant through the question, and that's not appropriate under the rules. He can ask what Mr. Cox told him, but not testify for his client. Well, I'll rephrase the question. Yeah, rephrase it at least. Mr. Traversal, were you? The court, I do not recall exactly that testimony. Question, where did you receive some sort of instruction from Mr. Cox regarding keep your distance from Mr. Fulton or Mr. Bennett? I don't recall him saying keep your distance. I recall him saying not to become engaged in their foolish behavior. Okay, all right. Now in February, okay, so February 4th, you go to Mr. Cox's house. February 5th was a militia convention. And then on February 6th, in an unrecorded meeting with Mr. Cox at a house that he was watching at Super Bowl, you had a meeting with him then, right? Yeah, okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Then on February 12th, is that when you have a meeting at Ken Thessing's bus, correct? Yes, it would have been. And the 2 days later, February 14th, there was another meeting. What was that, at Mr. Vernon's house, Mr. Barney's house? That would have been Mr. Vernon's house. Okay, now at February 12th, the 2-for-1 plan was kibosh, right? I mean, they said, no, we're not going to do this, correct? I don't remember them saying that. Do you remember the words, we're going to do a Gandhi, not a Rambo? That was mixed in the conversations that were planning it. Yes, okay, so Mr. Cox never said to you, we're going to do a Rambo rather than a Gandhi, or did he say we're going to do a Gandhi rather than a Rambo? Objection calls for hearsay. Overruled. Could you repeat the question? Did Mr. Cox say at the meeting, we're not going to do a Rambo, we're going to do a Gandhi? It was something similar to that, something about, yeah, Gandhi. Okay, so what's your understanding of a Rambo would be? To fight? Okay, and what's your understanding of what a Gandhi would be? Gandhi was a peaceable guy. Non-violence, right? Yeah. Okay, after the February 12th meeting, did you tell Mr. Sutherland that the FBI, that you said nothing was going on at that point? Did you tell them that? Did you remember? I don't recall. Okay, when you had your debriefing on February 12th, did you tell Mr. Sutherland that nothing was going on? I'd have to look at the 1023s that were produced to answer that question correctly. That brings up another matter, Mr. Olson. You said 1023. What is the 1023? What is that? That's the debrief. When I was at the end of the day, at the end of the meeting, when I'd meet up with Agent Sutherland, he would do a report of the debrief, and those reports became what they call 1023s. They are the form number, right? I guess so, yes. Okay, so when you came down here in April of 2012 to prepare for this case, yeah, I guess it was April. How long were you here for? A couple of weeks, okay. Well, after the meeting at February 12th, where the words were used, we're going to do a Gandhi, not a Rambo, you had a meeting on February 14th. Do you remember February 14th saying anything about a confrontation trying to instigate this 2-for-1 plan? Saying that to who? To Cox, Barney, or Vernon? I don't understand the question. Okay, do you remember saying something about to Mr. Vernon and Mr. Cox, or not to Mr. Barney, but Mr. Cox and Mr. Vernon, that what happens if they capture you? What the game plan at that point? Do you remember anything about that? That came up a few times, so I remember talking about that. And were you told by Mr. Agent Sutherland to ask that question? Not that specific question, no. Were you told to generate some sort of plan that needed to be executed by the militia, or try to emphasize that? No, I was not told to generate any kind of plan. I was told to gather the facts, get information on the plan that they had in place. But if you're saying what happens if they capture you, in other words, you're referring to the hearing that he had on February the 14th, right? I don't recall if it was that hearing, that trial, or date, or from then on out, because he had a warrant for his arrest. Okay, the point of the matter is there was a warrant for a misdemeanor, and you wanted to know what the game plan was before he got arrested, correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay, and again, the emphasis was Gandhi, no violent plan, correct? I don't specifically remember him saying Gandhi at that meeting. Would you like me to play that recording? Sure, if you've got the transcript number too, so I can follow along. This is a cross-examination, Mr. Olson. I will try to do that for you the best I can, but it'll take time. Will this be your Exhibit 4? Exhibit 4, Madam Clerk, I apologize. Thank you, 15A. What is this? Hold on just for a second. Defendant's Exhibit FSC 4. Nelson, hold on just a second. What is this? This is from 15463 1D 17110214 CHS 1911111 14-2. Is there a page number? That is the recording number I have. What's the time? The time is 19:11:55. Lamro. And is the transcript in here, or what's the folder? There should be a transcript of that in there, but it is. Is it? Do you know what the tab it's under? I don't have it marked. I don't have it marked there for you, but it should be in the binder. Under which? What number? That would be number. We're going to from 27 to 51, right? Well, that's the best I'm going to be able to do for you. I don't know what number that is. I just know it by the times and the scrocky. Okay. The recording I received. Stand by just a second. We'll see if we can get it that way. Traversal, all right. Are these the transcripts? It's February 14th, right? And are these the transcripts we're going to play? Traversal, yes. Okay, if you want to refer to transcript, I guess it would be 04237. It's the Bates number or transcript number 004237. I worked off the audio recordings. So this is the one is not in evidence, right? It's part of the equation. It's not in the evidence. This isn't an exhibit note that we've presented. Okay, so and the timestamp is it would be 1911:55. Is there a Bates stamp on the transcript 04237? No, it just says transcript number. Traversal, can I play it? I can't find it. All right. I'd like to have Scrocky. If it's Mr. Cox speaking, we object. No, this is Mr. Olson. Witness, I'd like to have a copy of the transcript so I can just get an idea of what's been said if it's me speaking. Traversal, I'm not lying to you, Mr. Olson. Oh, I never said you were lying. Traversal, okay. If it's me speaking, I'd like to be able to get a context of what's being said rather than just a snippet, right? Can we play the recording, please? Thank you. The court. What I need to know, and what the recording needs to know, and what the record needs to know, is what the exhibit number is that you're playing from. Again, Your Honor, audio recording, sorry. End of audio recording. Traversal, sorry. The recording is exhibit number 4. It would be 15463 as the folder. Its ID 1D17 is the 11th. Is 110214 CHS 1911.11 140211. That is right off the audio recording. Scrocky, we don't dispute that. Okay, well, we just don't have the exhibit number. So, okay, it's 15463. That's how it was given to me, and that's what I'm using. Not a problem. Indiscernible. Okay. We can worry ourselves to where you're at on what date or what transcript. Okay, well, so if I may play it, audio, sorry, end of audio, defense, audio. Okay, do you remember Mr. Olson asking Mr. Cox what would be the game plan if they capture him? I didn't get a copy of the transcript. Can I get a copy? I mean, for now, all along I've been going along with, for now, Mr. Olson, answer his questions. The witness, okay, to the best you can, by Mr. Traversal. Did you hear the audio? Let's replay it and then ask the question again, please. The audio's played. Do you remember that? Can you remember that? Yes, I heard that. Okay, did you ask what would be the game plan if they captured Mr. Cox? Yes, I asked that. Okay, what was that done under the direction and control of the government? Not specifically the question that I posed, but the general outline of everything was we need to find out when and what we're going, and that we're going to execute the 2-for-1 plan. Okay, so in context of that, that's what. But why the question was asked. But on February 12th at the meeting in Ken Thessing's bus or compound, as you've described it, they decided that they were going to do a Gandhi, not a Rambo, correct? Answer, that was what you testified to. That was one snippet of the conversation. Other parts of the conversation, they were ready to execute the 2-for-1 as we heard. Okay, so you're saying that Mr. Cox wanted to engage in killing people with his 2-for-1 plan and that he had not renounced any plan to execute it. Scrocky, objection calls for hearsay response. Traversal, he's testifying through the question. I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor. All right. Traversal, are you saying that Mr. Cox concluded at that proceeding on February 12th that he was going to engage in 2-for-1 and execute the plan as you've described today? I guess I don't quite understand. Okay. The question. Was there on February 12th meeting at the bus, did Mr. Cox say that he was going to execute 2-for-1? He said that he didn't, it wasn't the time yet. Okay, he said something to the effect that he didn't want to do a Rambo, he wanted to do a Gandhi, correct? Same objection, he said it earlier. It doesn't matter if he said it earlier, that's objections now. You can ask him what he heard, what he said. You can ask him what he heard, what he said. Mr. Traverso, your purpose in this meeting was to find out what was going on, right? Throughout that, the whole meeting, the 2-for-1 was talked about as we heard, okay? He threw the Gandhi part at one point. Oh, he threw it in, okay? Well, when you left that meeting on February 12th, was it your belief that 2-for-1 was going to be executed immediately? No, it wasn't. That it was going to be executed in a month. Not a month specifically, but at future time. At some uncertain date. Yes. Okay, when on February the 6th, if you can go back a little bit in time, you come back from Anchorage, did you give a summary of the events of the militia convention to Mr. Cox at the Super Bowl party that he was at? Yes, I did. And did you ask Mr. Cox on February 6th whether he was interested in buying C4? I don't recall if it was. You don't recall if it was, then no, I don't recall. Do you recall if Mr. Cox was upset when you came back from February 5th convention and you met with him on February 6th? Do you remember if he was upset with you? No, he was not upset with me. He was not upset. You remember that distinctly? Yes. Okay, and this specific event was not recorded, correct? I guess not. I don't know. Well, didn't you testify yesterday that there was one occasion or two occasions where you didn't record? I recorded, but the recorder, something malfunctioned with the recorder. There was a malfunction with the recorder. Okay, on February 2nd, you go out, you said yesterday, you went out to Mr. Cox's property off the Broadway Road, correct? Yes, and there was a shed there, right? Their weapons cache shed, yes. Okay, were most of those firearms belonging to Mr. Cox? The militia, it was his militia, so I guess technically they would be his. Well, you went to his property, correct? Yes, I did. There was nothing about that shed that said that it was a militia shed. Well, there wasn't a sign on the side of the building saying militia cache, but it had been referred to at several different conversations that's where the militia weapons cache was. It was referred to you by Mr. Sutherland of the FBI that it was a weapons cache. No, no, sir, not at all. Are you saying that Mr. Cox has told you in one of the recordings that there's a weapons cache on my property? We'll need to go there and move that stuff so I can leave? He didn't specifically say those words. Okay, did at any point Mr. Cox or Mr. Barney say anything about a weapons cache off the Broadway Road in North Pole? At some point, I believe we heard it yesterday. I asked if that was the weapons cache that had been talked about to one of them. I don't remember which one it was, but it was either Mr. Cox or Mr. Barney. Okay, you saw 8 live grenades, correct? Correct. Well, we've been here since May the 7th, Mr. Olson. Would you be surprised to hear that nobody has seized 8 live grenades by the government? Yeah, that surprises me. That surprises you? Okay, now that was on the 22nd. If you had 8 live grenades on February 22nd, why did you go to Esther to try to sell 8 grenades through Fulton to Mr. Cox or Mr. Barney? Because he wanted all the grenades he could get in his hands on. Are we talking, Mr. Cox, grenades? Didn't when you went to Anchorage on February 4th or you met up with Mr. Cox at his house, the interest at that point was pineapple grenades, correct? Yes. Okay, and they have a hole in the bottom, right? That's the one they wanted us to get, yes. Were the bodies, yes. In fact, the reference he made was get the grenade, pineapple grenade, the paperweight kind, something like that. He didn't say paperweight. He didn't say paperweight. He didn't say paperweight. That I recall, no. But I remember him saying pineapple grenade bodies with fuses, and then he also ordered us to look into getting fuses as well, and then he went into how he puts fuses in them. Did Mr. Cox? Well, never mind. We don't get into that. We won't get into that. We'll do that later. But on March 1st, were you instructed by the government to try to get Mr. Cox to buy 8 grenades at Esther? At Esther? In the cabins at Esther? No, I was not instructed by the government to specifically at that time. That was in the general scope of everything. On March 1st, did you go up to the cabins that belonged to Mr. Barney? Yes, we did. And there tried to sell either to Mr. Barney or Mr. Cox 8 grenades. I don't recall the exact words of the conversation, but I let them know that Bill had grenades available. Okay, per Schaefer's orders to get the grenades while we were in Anchorage. So it's kind of follow-up to that. Okay, you were talking about full grenades, live grenades, weren't you, on March 1st? I don't specifically recall. You don't specifically recall? When was your very first meeting with the FBI on this case? On this specific case, it was sometime in the first part of August. I don't have a specific date. And the agreement was that you would not do anything unless directed by the FBI, correct? That's correct. And you also instructed at either of the date or the subsequent date to record all your meetings with Mr. Cox, correct? That's correct, yes. Did you, after your February 6th meeting with Mr. Cox, get debriefed by Mr. Sutherland, explain to him that the recorder was not working? The February 6th meeting? What meeting was that again? At the Super Bowl. Oh, the Super Party where he was at that you testified to yesterday. At that time, I had no idea the recorder was not working. Okay, and you weren't, Mr. Sutherland, ever bring it to your attention whether it had malfunctioned? No, not until the whole case was done, and it was maybe a month or two after the arrests were made. Okay, I'm going to stop at page 151. I'm sorry, I'm stopping at page 101. All right, let's continue on page 101 with Gerald Olson cross-examination. Okay, did you ever do a written report of anything that you did in this case and give it to Mr. Sutherland? I don't believe I did a written report, but I've signed so many papers and did so much paperwork that I may have. I don't recall specifically. Okay, and when you discussed yesterday that you were getting paid $77,000 for this case, that isn't all that you're getting paid, right? That's what I've been promised. I'm hoping to get some more payment for services. The $77,000 was for moving. I had to move my family of 4 out. Okay, and that's expensive? All right. Could I have 70, please, exhibit 70? Question. You were asked by Mr. Scrocky if you could identify the hands of Mr. Cox, and you said first, yeah, they're brown. And then you said they're white, and then you said something about green. Did you say green? Yes, it looks in this computer screen. Are those gloves? It very well could be, yes. Okay. When you handed the materials over to Mr. Cox, did you tell Mr. Cox that we should wear gloves in case we give these back to Mr. Fulton? Scrocky, objection, hearsay. It's exculpatory, Your Honor. It doesn't matter. But it also goes to what was left out in this video. He may answer. I did not hear that statement by Mr. Cox. Are you saying that it... Scrocky, wait a minute. We need to clear up something here about exculpatory and not being in the video. We had an agreement with respect to this, so that's part that needs to be clarified. Question. Did any... Scrocky, no, wait a minute. Do you agree, counsel? Rephrase your question. Who the hell does Scrocky think he is telling Traverso to rephrase his question? Can I ask my next question, Your Honor? I don't know what agreement you guys made. I don't know what he's talking about. Traversal says I don't know what he's talking about. Scrocky, this is the concerning a section of the audio that we voluntarily agreed upon to remove. Traversal, whether you give me an exhibit and whether it's admissible are two different things. Scrocky, we need to have a chat with the judge outside the presence of the jury. Let's go on to something else. We're getting close. Who does Scrocky think he is, man? It's like he's the biggest, bossiest piece of crap I've ever heard of. Traverso, all right. The judge just follows Scrocky like a little puppy dog. Yeah, okay, Scrocky, we'll do what you say. Traverso, all right. The court, we're getting close to time for that. Traverso, are you clear about whether or not you're listening to everything that Mr. Cox had to say? Or were you listening to what Mr. Barney had to say, or were you listening to both at the same time? Well, I was in the vehicle. I believe this when I wasn't in the vehicle, so I wouldn't have heard anything that was said when this was played. Okay, so because I was out of the vehicle for 60 seconds or whatever, it took to run and get the silencers and grenades. Okay, so this picture that's depicted in Exhibit Government number 70 is before you leave to go to the trailer to pick up the backpack? Or was that, I don't know. I don't honestly know if it was before or during, I don't know. We would have to play the video again, and if I could, we could play that video again, I could see it. I could tell you explicitly where this is. Okay, but I can't answer that just by looking at one picture. Okay, we'll get to that. When you were at these meetings of the militia, you stated that, well, let me ask you this. When was it that you recall 241 coming up for the first time? At the meeting in Ken Thessing's bus when Schaefer brought it up? Okay, and have you ever used the words 241 before in your work of drug trafficking or any other activities before you got involved in this case? No, not at all. That's kind of a, I'm sure I said 241 at some point in my life, I mean. Okay, but I'm 37 years old. Well, with the same meaning. In other words, you were involved in some pretty dangerous activities before. Could you have ever used the phrase 2 for 1 or 1 for 1? I never have been. I have been involved in a lot of illegal, dangerous stuff, but if I was never planning on killing people for one. So in that sense, no, I never used the phrase 1 for 1 or 2 for 1 in all the bad things I've done. I've never wanted to kill people. Were you doing this dangerous activities? Did you wear a gun? No, I never did. You never wore? Not that I recall. I may have had a gun around, but I never been a big gun packer. You never had a gun when you were with the Hells Angels? Objection to the form of the question. He wasn't with Hells Angels. Sustained. Okay, rephrase. When you were working with Hells Angels, did you ever have a gun then? No, not that I recall. I packed a knife. You packed a knife. You were hauling a substantial amount of drugs, correct? It was quite a bit of drugs, yes. How much would you get paid for each trip that you made to Fairbanks to Washington? How much would you get paid? Like I testified earlier, it was just depended. It depended on how much it was. Was it more than 1,000, more than 2,000, more than 3,000? It was more than 1,000. Okay, and how often would you do this? I did about 15 to 16 to 18 trips, something like that. something like maybe more than one trip a month. A couple of times it was more than one trip a month, but then then I might go 2 or 3 months without doing any trips. So it just depended. What was the quantity of drugs that you were bringing in on one trip, perhaps? I honestly don't know. Well, what was the value of those drugs that you would pack in a vehicle with the groceries? I don't know. I never did see the drugs. You were totally in the dark about the value of the drugs, how much you were transporting, but you weren't in the dark about where you were going, correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay. Okay, it's lunchtime. We'll let the jury go. You can have a nice lunch break and come back at 1:30. At 1:30, ready to go to work. The court, you can step down, Mr. Olson. You can step down. Step down. Okay. Okay, minute. I asked for the exhibit number of what you played. You said Exhibit 4. It's not my transcript of Exhibit 4. Traversal, Defense Exhibit 4, Your Honor. Okay, well, that's not. And then Exhibit 4, and then the other exhibit. That's something different, okay? And I don't think I have a witness exhibit list from you, so I don't know what exhibits you've marked or how they've marked or anything. Well, it depends on how the witness testified. I didn't know which exhibits I was going to need on cross-examination. Speak louder, please. It depends on what the witness testifies on direct. I don't know exactly what my exhibit list will be. Well, I understand, but if you're bringing up Exhibit 4, Defense Exhibit 4, then you have to identify that, sure, before you play it and offer it. I'm identifying the actual recording and folder that was given to me by the government, Your Honor. I'm going to specifically buy the audio, so there's no issue about transcripts. Because even though there are transcripts in this case, there are problems with certain words and also, well, speakers. So I understand that. I use the audio, but we have exhibits in, sure. And if you want more exhibits in, you have to identify them. There may be an objection. There may be something wrong with your exhibit. I don't know. Okay. So we've got to go. Well, I will by exhibit number. Well, I will do, Your Honor, I will come up with something so that the government will know. I will try to convert this to something they can, use. That would be helpful because it's hard to follow. Okay. The court. Now, also, when you make objections, if you just make your objection and state grounds without argument, then don't everybody keep talking so I can rule on it. I don't let you get away with that little. I let you get away with that little bit there, where there's too much conversation and then there's a change in the question, so which is a good way to resolve an objection. But give me a break and don't argue. You're just state grounds, and if it requires argument, we'll get to that. Now, you had something about some side agreement you guys have, and I don't, Scrocky, yes, know anything about. Well, there's been a lot of paperwork, Judge. So, oh yeah, Scrocky, there has. So here's what's going on. In the video of the arrest and the defendants, we filed notice with the court that in our view, when Mr. Olson left the vehicle, that was an intercept. Do you recall that, sir? The court, yeah. Scrocky, right. So that was an intercept. So what we did is this. We notified counsel. We said we're taking out the audio because of that intercept. We did that voluntarily. We didn't. We felt we had grounds to keep it in. We decided not to. So we went around to everybody and said, here's what we're going to do. We're taking that audio out, and we got no objection. So I don't think it's appropriate to be stating now it's exculpatory in front of the jury. It makes it look like we kept it quiet. I think that needs to be cleared up for the jury on the record. If he wants to introduce it as voluntarily, that's a whole different matter. But we asked them about that, and they didn't do it. Well, Traverso, I, Scrocky. So to do it now is a little late. Dooley, if I may, my understanding was we were substituting an audio from a different device into something else. I may have misunderstood what you were saying, but I don't think we were cutting out the wire. The Scrocky, but we, Traverso, part of the recording, Dooley audio, Scrocky, we sent the audio out as an exhibit. Scrocky, it was, the court, well, Scrocky, pretty obvious that there's no audio for that section. The court, here's the deal. If it's in evidence, you can play it. If it's not in evidence already, then you've got to identify what it is you're going to play. Mark it as an exhibit, offer it. And we'll hear it if there are objections. And then it's either in or out. Is that's like Traversal, that's fine. Old-fashioned evidence 101. Traversal, yeah, I think. That would be the case. If that does, in fact, happen, we would like an instruction to the jury that our understanding of the party's understanding was it was taken out for a legal reason. If they want to offer it, we'd like to talk to them about it, but we were under the understanding we were on the same sheet of music. We heard nothing back from the defense on this. The court, well, Hayden, If I could just be heard, my understanding was that the government was taking out the audio from the point where Mr. Olson was not in the vehicle. Say when, your microphone please. He left the vehicle to get, right, the Pelican case, yes, which is what he did. Lamro, and that's what Mr. Nelson was referring to, Mr. Traverso, okay, was referring to, but we didn't agree that when everybody was asked to exit the vehicle and get down in the snow, that's a whole different matter. Okay, that wasn't the scope of our exhibit. I just want to be clear that I don't agree to that. We will object when it comes, but I understand. Miss Hayden, I understand. So we got 1 out of 3 who understood what we're saying. Scrocky is such a jerk, man. The court, all right now. Miss Hayden, do I get a prize? The court, you've requested an instruction from the court. I decline to instruct the jury as you suggest. Mr. Scrocky, because I have no idea what I ought to tell them, and so this request is denied, all right? Anything else we can do for good of the peace here? No, Your Honor. All right, 1:30. All rise. This matter is in recess until 1:30. The clerk, all rise. His dishonor the court. The dishonorable United States Court is again in session. Please be seated. Okay, for the record, I met with counsel in chambers now on a matter that is only peripherally related. I don't think any particular record needs to be made of it, our short meeting, but if any counsel wants to put anything on the record about, you're welcome to. Okay, are we straight now on the exhibits? Traverso, yes, Your Honor. Okay, bring the jury in, please. All right, Mr. Traverso, thank you. Cross-examination continued. Good afternoon, Mr. Olson, Hell's Angel, jerk, criminal, rat-faint government informant. Hello. When items were moved from the shed in the North Pole that you called the weapons cache, yes, and they were sent over to Barney's residence, were you present when the items were moved into the trailer? No, I wasn't. Okay, you were aware, however, that Mr. Cox, through your earlier testimony, was trying to leave, right? Leave the state? Leave the state. Yes, and your job was to try to delay him for this virtual trucker named Han Solo, right? That wasn't my job. Okay, what were you trying to delay him to stay here while a warrant was issued so he wouldn't leave? No, the warrant had already been issued. The warrant had already been issued. So was the warrant acted upon through the time you were involved in this case? What do you mean? Was acted upon? Was he ever arrested on that particular warrant while you were involved as an informant? He was arrested. Whether that warrant was part of it, I don't know. Okay, he was arrested at the takedown on March 10th, correct? Oh, yes. But any time before that, it was never came to your attention that he was arrested on the warrant regarding his case? No, he wasn't. Okay, now over some weeks, how long was it between the time that you said you knew a trucker available that could take him and his family and the time that, and between the time March 10th, how long of a period was that? That would have been roughly a month. You know, maybe a little guess, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Okay, and essentially part of the plan there was to try to said, truck broke down in Canada or lower 48 or something like that, just to extend the time period, correct? That wasn't a plan, but that's what we came up with as we went along. Okay, but there was never a plan? Okay. You mentioned that you went into the trailer on one occasion, correct? Yes. Did you see tools, clothes, tops, toys, that kind of stuff in the trailer? I don't specifically remember specific items, but there was, household items, yes. Did you see any dried food? I don't recall seeing that, no. Okay, all right. Did you ever go and try with Mr. Cox to try and buy dried food during the winter months when you were working as an informant? There was one time that we had, I don't remember when, but we were heard about some dried food for sale. Okay. Do you remember going there with Mr. Cox, pallets of dried food, trying to get them? No, I don't recall that. Okay, when you got these live grenades from Mr. Fulton and silencer, you said something about 3 silencers. Did you say objection mischaracterizes the testimony? They weren't live grenades. Okay. These grenades that you picked up from Mr. Fulton, was that interaction with Mr. Fulton recorded? Yes, as far as I remember it was. I don't remember specifically. I don't know my pickup was with Wired, but I can't honestly answer if that specific going up into the hotel was recorded. I don't remember. You don't remember? Okay. We could find out, okay. You were here in April. Did you discuss that particular recording? I don't recall. We discussed a lot of recordings, okay. I don't recall the particular recording. Okay, you don't remember if there was a recording? I don't know. Okay, what were Mr. Sutherland's instructions to you when you went to the shed and you said you saw these 8 live grenades? What did he instruct you to do about that? I don't remember any specific instructions on that particular thing. I don't recall. Nothing, okay? When Mr. Vernon and yourself came over to Mr. Cox's house on February the 4th, you mentioned that you knew of some M16s that might be available, correct? Yes, I did. And Mr. Cox did not agree to that, did he? He didn't show any interest in those, no. Thank you, I have no further questions. Mr. Dooley. Mr. Olson, I'm Tim Dooley. I represent Coleman Barney. Hello, hello. You've testified to some things which, of course, are disputed. The eight hand grenades at Bradway Shed. Objection. Is this a question or a statement? It's a fair objection. It's a statement. Yeah, leading to a question. Well, it's a fair objection. Did you testify to that? What was repeated again? That you saw 8 hand grenades at the Bradley Shed. Yeah, I did. And you testified that Coleman Barney was present during the discussion of grenades on March 1st at Esther Cabins. Yeah, he was. Now, for that, people are going to have to trust you, correct? For what? To believe you? There's recordings. There's recordings? Yeah, I didn't hear a recording. Could you remind me of that? Let's say for the Bradway Shed. The recording was that I opened up the ammo can and seen the grenades. Okay, well, we'll get back to that in a minute. How about the recording of Coleman Barney on the tape? You're saying at the Esther Cabins. He was present in the room or in the cabin. Right, I didn't hear that on the tape. Did you? I went over it right when I first got on the stand this morning, reiterated that, and I heard that this voice on the recording. Now the question. I have too much stuff to say up there at the table. I think I'll sit here. Thank you. This militia group, it's pretty obvious they trusted you. Would you agree? Yes, I'd agree to that. They trusted you to talk about silencers, correct? Yes. I understand Cox trusted you with cash and checks to give to his tenant, Joseph. Yes. Trusted you enough so you would go to a command staff meeting at Ken Thessing's bus, correct? Yes. Mr. Cox trusted you to give an AR rifle, correct? I don't recall an AR rifle, him giving me an AR rifle. How about any rifle? The only rifle that I remember him giving me was an HK-93 that we traded for the silencer pistol combination. Oh, okay. Mr. Cox trusted you to give notes to various people, correct? Yes. To Joseph, I don't remember any other notes off the top of my head. Okay, Mr. Cox trusted you to give in particular a note to Mr. Rob Carr, asking Mr. Carr to give you the 93 and the lower, correct? That's right. Yes, I forgot about that one. You mentioned during your direct exam that you had done some septic systems for people, correct? Yes, that's correct. And that they were uncertified. Yes, and a number of people ended up with your services in the septic system business, correct? Yes, they trusted you to do a job right and gave you money for that, correct? Yes. Incidentally, you had said it was a crib system. I think you said you put it in. A couple of them were, yes, with crushed cars, correct? Not crushed cars, but a car body. A crib system is made out of a car body, a septic system can. It's what they did for a long time, so it wasn't a crushed car. Really, if the windows rolled up, it's a good system? That's the way the old timers did it. Isn't a crib system one where you put wooden cribs in a square, they eventually rot, and you put them back in again with wood? That'd be one way of constructing a crib system. Okay, the folks did not know you were putting a car in the ground. They thought you were putting in a septic tank, correct? A few of them, yes. Okay, remember back when you were talking about the Bobcat that you eventually were convicted of stealing? Yes, the police officer questioning you, at least initially, trusted you when you said you had a receipt for it somewhere, and you'd have to dig it up, correct? Objection calls for speculation. Well, let me put it this way. He didn't immediately arrest you, did he? No, he did not. He left and came back some days later, correct? Yes, he did. Now, can you remember the names of the people for whom you put in the septic system? No, I sure don't. It was a lot of years ago. Now, you also had some other businesses other than putting in septic systems, correct? Yeah, that's correct. What are those? I've done a lot of things in my life. Sawmill, logging, well drilling business. Cabin building, yes, that went along with the sawmill. And you had made promises to people to build things or construct things, and then given you money in the hopes that you would do that, correct? Along the way, yes. And some of these people you never did, correct? There was about 3 of them, so about 3. 3. Yeah, can you remember the names of the people you were dealing with? No, I can't. You remember a man named Don Kramer? Not off the top of my head, no. No, you don't remember him at all. No, I sure don't. Now, eventually, this man gave you $7,500. Do you remember that? Well, what's it regarding? Mr. Dooley, Mr. Robertson, could you hit the attorney left thing? Maybe I should have the gadget. And first off, your full name is Gerald Raymond Olson. Yes, correct. Olson, correct. And your date of birth is 9/28/74. Okay, I'm going to try to blank this thing properly, and I'm just going to show you things on your screen so that you can see them, I hope. Okay, and perhaps this will rephrase your recollection. Do you see that? Yes, I do. I'll scroll down a bit, and if you remember anything about this, yes, I do. Now that it's now that it's here. All right, you were doing an interior drilling thing here, right? Yes, this is regarding a well. This wasn't had anything to do with cabins or septic systems. Okay. Scrocky, Your Honor, we object to this outside the scope of the direct, and this is a civil matter with respect to this action. It's not been adjudicated, so for that reason, we don't think it's appropriate for cross. Mr. Dooley, actually, it may have been litigated, but it may not have been litigated, but it's been adjudicated. Scrocky, it's also, I'm sorry, it's also not related to the criminal matters we went into or the civil matters we went into on direct. Well, the objection's overruled. Now this, I think you'll agree, you've got a default judgment against you, correct? That's correct. Have you paid this man? No, I have not. It looks like he has a judgment for about $9,300. Yes, that's correct. All right. Do you remember a Miss Laboda? Yes, I do. And a friend of hers, Pamela Jason, yes. And you were working as a northern contractor at that time, yes. Do you recall what you promised to do for her? I built her a cabin, a log cabin. Okay, and you didn't finish it, correct? That's correct. She has a judgment against you. She gave you money, correct? And now she has a judgment of $36,700, correct? Have you paid her? No, I haven't. Do you remember a Joseph Losinski? No, I don't. Let me toss it up. He was one of the sewage people, right? Do you recall now? No, I don't, because I was in Fairbanks, so it wouldn't have been. Counsel, Scrocky, counsel, for the record, could you at least establish which exhibit you're speaking about as opposed to your scrolling exhibits? Duly right. Down in front of Mr. Olson, there's no record as to which ones you're speaking on. That's true. I'm reminding him of things, but I have exhibit. Well, if he recalls, then you should not be showing him the exhibits. I'm showing you exhibit CB-O. Who the hell does Scrocky think he is, ordering around the defense counsel without going through the judge? Man, I tell you, this Scrocky guy is about as corrupt and wicked as they come. You know, usually you talk to the judge and you let the judge tell the other side what to do. Scrocky's just giving orders to the freaking defense. The most absurd thing I've ever heard of. I'm showing you exhibit CB-O. Yes, I see that. All right, this man has a judgment against you for $953, correct? Yes, for drywall work. Have you paid him? No, I haven't. Now I'm showing you CB-P, and this is Mr. William. Yes. Do you recall what you did for him or didn't do for him? No, well, there you go. This was a cabin project. All right, you didn't finish that, correct? I don't recall the specifics on this one. Okay. He gave you, do you recall that he gave you $5,000? No, I don't. But we have a judgment for $5,000, correct? Yes. Did you pay him? Pay him back? Yes or no, I haven't. I'm showing you exhibit CB-Q. Do you see that one? Yes, I do. Do you recall that? Yes, exchange. Yes, that's the car that we had repossessed. Okay, and then you owed them more money, correct? I see $4,900.95. $49.39.95. Right. Have you paid that one? No, I haven't. Now I'm showing you CB-R Lisa Pasty, correct? Do you remember her? Yes, I do. What were you going on there? Same thing, a cabin, and she gave you money to build a cabin, correct? And you didn't finish the cabin, correct? It was a cabin kit, and I delivered it to the barge at Nenana, and I don't know what happened to it from there. So it isn't your fault that I'm not saying that. Whatever. I'm not saying it's not my fault, but somehow sitting at the barge waiting for the ice to go out, it disappeared, and nobody would take responsibility for it. So it got put on me, and ultimately it was my responsibility. And there was a judgment for $6,000, a little more. Yeah, that's correct. Have you paid that one? No, I haven't. I'm looking at now exhibit CB-S. Do you see that? Yes, I do. Look familiar to you? No, it doesn't look familiar, but I'm looking at it. Okay, you had an order here to pay restitution to some people, and I'll remind you up there it had to do with wastewater systems, correct? So up there in the upper right, yes, this is regarding my first felony case, a septic system case. This is a judgment in that case. Okay, and among things that you needed to do was to pay a Miss Kitty only $4,220, correct? And all that was combined into one judgment, and then I had to deal with the court to make payments to the court as part of my restitution. So I wasn't supposed to pay that in one lump sum. How many payments have you made? I don't know. Maybe none? Oh, I've made payments. I had to make payments while I was on probation. My probation officer made me make payments every month. Otherwise, I would have gotten a probation revocation and thrown back in jail. So I went 4 years on probation without a provocation or revocation. And I was obviously made them for 4 years. And you owed Mr. Richard Smith $7,177,000. That's part of that, right? That's the same judgment for the septic systems, yes? But Kitty Olney and Richard Smith had given you money in return for your promise to do something, correct? No, I installed a septic systems for them. Well, you promised to install a septic system, correct? Yes, I did. All right, and had you just saying that you did that, but it was a car, it wasn't some of just pipes of another trash? No, that's incorrect. Well, were they new cars? No, they were old car bodies, all right, vans or whatever. And then there's a Mary Shubowski. She gave you money for, I guess, the septic system, $1,100. Yes, this is all part of the same judgment, right? The original criminal case, this is Mr. Ernie Berg. He gave you money for a septic system, $3,540, right? He actually did in the Berg development. He went in and repaired one of the septic systems, and then as part of my plea agreement, I was to reimburse him back for the repairs that he made on a septic system. Aloysius and Darlene, is it Papak or Paypack? Do you know? I don't know. And the amount for them is $11,480, right? Yes. And then Craig or Susie Sabert, the amount for them is $21,131. Yes. Have you paid any of these off completely? I don't know how the court handles the restitution payments. I don't know if they disperse it out as a percentage, and I probably don't. And I paid probably close to $20,000 in restitution, so I don't know how that dispersed. If they start off at the top, they work their way down. If some of them got paid off, or if it's just been a percentage, I'm not sure. Here's Totem Equipment and Supply. There are folks who lease to you. This is CBT. These are the folks who rented or leased the backhoe, or what was it? This is a Bobcat case, and I told you about earlier when I rented the Bobcat and did not return it and turned it in as stolen as part of my plea agreement with the FBI and the state that we agreed to. I had agreed to pay $54,514 in restitution, and that's what this is regarding here. Have you paid that? No, sir, I haven't. Have you paid any of it? I've made some restitution payments. How much? I don't know. And you reported that this Bobcat had been stolen, and how long did that last until you were caught on that? It was about a year's time, 11 months. Here's Exhibit CB-U as a uniform. Remember this man, John Vaught? I sure don't. Scroll down and I might be able to. Okay. Yes, now I recall. You paid some money and you were going to complete a 4-bedroom DEC certified septic system, correct? Yes, and I did complete that. The $500 here is for the engineer's fee to design the system. He supervised the project, the engineer did. Have you and this is the judgment for $500, correct? Have you paid this one? No, sir, I haven't. Looking at CBJ, do you remember Affordable Loan Company? Yes, I sure do. And what's that about? That's a pickup I bought and it got repossessed and I couldn't make the payments and they sued me for $4,859.00 and I got a judgment against me for that pickup. Have you paid that? No, sir, I haven't. Showing you CB-K, do you recall this? Yes, I do. What's this? Grocky, Judge, I'm going to object to this one. We're talking about 2002 here. Is it? That's what it says. Well, that's the filing date. Let's see. The objection's overruled. What's involved here? This is a default judgment for the State Labor Board or Wage and Labor, whoever handles the wages, and this was regarding a truck driver I had working for me on percentage. I didn't get paid on the job, and so consequently I couldn't pay him, and he sued me for the $7,500 in wages. Okay, have you paid that? No, sir, I haven't. This one is CB-L. Do you recall this one? No, I don't. It's check right, so I assume it's for probably a bounce check. Let's see. See the amount here, $814.87. Have you, and this is a default judgment, yes. Have you paid that? No, sir, I haven't. And I think you said that you did not pay income tax since 1999. That's correct. And presumably that includes no income tax on monies that the state or the federal government has given you. That's correct. Let me make this thing quit here. Like I said, there's a lot of things I've done in my past that I'm not proud of, and this is right here, and everything he's laid out, and I hope to correct this and cure this. How long do you think it'd take to fix that? It's going to take quite a while. Okay. There was a lot of years that I was doing bad things, and I presume it's going to take a lot of years to correct that. I wanted to talk to you about this 8 hand grenades in the Bradway shed. Now, what I heard on the tape, but maybe you heard something different, correct me. Scrocky, objection. Correct me. He's testifying. Sustained. Correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't have to hear anything. I was there. I lived it. So I didn't have to listen to the tape to know what was going on. I was in the weapons cache myself. Incidentally, you're using the term weapons cache. You never heard of any of these 3 people call it a weapons cache, have you? Yes, I have. And you're going to get us where that is in the transcripts. I know it's in the transcripts. I heard it when we were preparing. I'm sure Agent Sutherland probably knows where that is at, or if not, they would be able to find it. Excellent. And it wouldn't have been just a stash, correct? No, it was not a stash. It was a weapons cache, C with a C. And sort of implies something hidden for future purposes, correct? I don't know. And the storage shed, which has guns in it, it's a cache? Yes, sir, that's what it was referred to as. In Mr. Vernon's house, that's a cache. That's what it was referred to, not his whole house. But there's a cache out there. You mean guns in different parts of a building? I don't know how they determined it to be a cache. To be honest with you, it was never explained to me that the particulars. Now, we never heard you say, "Oh my gosh, grenades," on your tape at Bradway storage shed. No, sir, you didn't. And you knew you were at a tape recording, correct? Yes. And you had at least an opportunity to say that much about the grenades, didn't you? Yeah, I could have, I guess. All right, and you have been fairly careful about getting things taped, correct? Yes, I would. Yes, I agree with that. And you never said to these guys, "Hey, fellas, I saw those 8 grenades. That's really neat, cool." You never brought that up to them at all, did you? No, not that I recall, no. Now, did you see them in a sealed ammo can? What do you mean sealed? Well, actually, what would you mean by the word sealed? Well, actually, what would you mean by the word sealed? Ammo cans are sealed when they're clasped shut. They have a good rubber seal around the top, the lid that you can pop it open, and they open the lid up and look in. When the lid's closed, it suctions down and seals it. So I guess in the sense they were sealed, it was a sealed ammo can. But as far as being wrapped in some kind of shrink wrap, it wasn't that kind of sealed. Okay, the 8 hand grenades, are you hoping to get paid per grenade? Like if you get more, if there were 20 grenades? Scrocky, argumentative. Fair question, you may answer it. No, there's been no implication or talk of getting paid per grenade. Was there any talk of getting paid if there's any amount of grenades? No, sir, there wasn't. And I may be done. Let me double check. Mr. Dooley. Oh, Mr. Robinson, may I trouble you for Exhibit 62, which was already been admitted? Mr. Olson, this already been admitted. Do these ammo cans look familiar to you? Those are ammo cans, but as far as familiar, all ammo cans look the same. So if you see one, then you've seen 10 more. They're all going to be all familiar. All right, are those similar to the ammo cans that you were moving at Bradway Shed? Yeah. That light green one in the front is the size of the ones that they were moving. The court. Why don't you dim the lights, Denali, so the jury can see the light better? Do you see an ammo that's up there, up underneath what looks like bowls or something? It has a bright yellow sticker on it. Yeah, I sure do. Is that the sealed ammo can? I can't answer that honestly, sir. I don't know. I've never seen that kind of ammo can before. When was the last time you saw this ammo can with 8 hand grenades? Where was it? It was I said it in Coleman Barney's back seat of his black Dodge pickup. And where did you understand it was going to be? To Coleman Barney's house. Okay, anywhere else where you understood it might go? No, sir, not that I remember. No further questions. Mr. Olson, Miss Hayden, I represent Lonnie Verdon. I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of your testimony a couple of days ago and ask you a little bit more about your background. Could you tell us a little bit more about this good family life that you enjoyed as a youth? Was it, how many brothers and sisters, what type of family you had? 2 sisters, a mom and a dad, and my parents were married, and it was a conservative religious home. Is that your testimony? Fairly conservative, yes. Did they teach you principles about what is not right to lie? About it was not right to lie, it was not right to steal, it's not right to cheat. Did they instill those principles in you? Yes, they did. And about what age did you abandon these principles? I left home when I was 16 years old and rebelled and went off on my own. I did not want to do anything with my parents or their religious ways, and I went wild. And from then until now, you have abandoned those principles that you were taught as youth until about 2.5 years ago. Yes, sir. Oh, and then you had a transition then? Yes, I did. Now back when you were youth, you joined the Montana militia. Well, there was nothing to join. It wasn't like this militia where, you joined up. It was more of a group, friends kind of deal. Well, Paul Stramer. Yeah, I do. You will know him today. Yeah, and he was one of the leaders. Yeah, he wasn't a leader in that militia. No, he was around it. Like I say, the leader of it who kind of organized things was a guy named John Trockman. But as far as the leadership structure, that's as far as he went. They weren't structured with sergeants and majors and colonels and privates and uniforms, nothing like that. It was just more of, like I say, you guys getting together. Well, they were attracted to that. Why were you attracted to this type of a group? I liked guns, and it was a kind of the outlaw. At that time, to me, coming from the upbringing I had, anything with guns and the militia name behind it, it was the outlawish to me. And you were attracted to being an outlaw, yeah. And what was in the beliefs of the Montana militia that you believed in? I don't recall their beliefs. You don't recall any of their beliefs that they had? Just guns, Second Amendment issues, I suppose, yeah. That's the only thing you ever talked about? They talked about a lot. We were talking about 20 years ago. So, I have a hard time remembering stuff that happened this morning. You have a hard time remembering things that happened this morning? Well, you know what I'm saying. No, I don't. I can't remember details of stuff from 20 years ago or from this morning. Is that what you just said? Sometimes, yes. Okay, and that's all you can remember is that you had guns and you wanted to be an outlaw. Is that what you recall from 20 years ago with the militia? The outlaw, the outlaw figure, the outlaw idea, yes, to me in mind. And then you went to Freeman standoff with the FBI, right? Yes, and that was highly publicized event. Yes, it was. People still talk about that. I suppose so. And you were there 3 days? Yeah, roughly 3 days. I think 3 days total from the time I left until the time I got back. So yeah. Did you take weapons to that? Yeah, we did. And how many? How many guys did you go with? Two. What did you do there? Just went in and it was kind of foolish. If you ask me, everyone was just all standing around peeking out the curtains and eating and just all kind of waiting. And so you were actually in the Freeman and the FBI were on the outside, yeah, during the 3 days of a standoff. It was a lot longer than that, but that's the time I was there. And then you left, and then, yeah, then I left. Why did you leave? My wife wanted me home, and I had just been married, and it was boring, like I say. Now, but still keep in contact with some of those folks, right? No, I don't. Paul Stramer, you don't keep in contact with? No, sir, I don't. Didn't you contact him on the case about Mr. Cox? I made one call to him, but I didn't talk to him in probably 14 years. He remembered you? Oh, yeah. And so you recently had a contact with Mr. Stramer? Yeah, I had contact with him. Now, did you share this experience with some of the people you met at Fairbanks? I don't recall a specific occasion where I did, but I'm sure I did. I'm sure you did with Mr. Cox, yeah. And with Mr. Barney? Like I say, I don't recall specifics. And you remember and do you remember what you shared about that, about your standoff with the FBI and what you told them? No, sir, I don't. Now I think let's talk about we talked about a bit about your criminal activity, right? Yes. But at the time you started your discussion of your criminal activity that you were a truck driver. Yes, I was. Now you paused. And you're trying to think if it goes back further than that or no, I like to think about my answer before I give my answer. Okay, so your criminal activity started when you were a truck driver. You can think about it. There was a time when I was 17 years old, 16, when I was arrested for shoplifting back in Montana. So I guess technically that's where my criminal history starts. And that caused you a problem driving through Canada? Yeah, it did. And you had to pay a bond or something to get through? Yeah, I did. Now you also talked about smuggling drugs from the U.S. through Canada to Alaska, and I'm a little bit confused. Was that cocaine or marijuana or both? I don't know of marijuana. I know it was cocaine. It was that I know. There might have been a couple of times that marijuana was involved, but specifically most of the time it was cocaine. And when you told Mr. Sutherland about the cocaine, correct? And the smuggling the cocaine in Alaska through Canada, and you were told that you would get it through in the cab of your truck, in the van of the truck, the load. Now that's different from the freight you had in the back, right? Yes. So we're talking about two different times of smuggling: cocaine in the cab of your truck and something else in the back of the truck. Or was that cocaine too? Yeah, it was cocaine. Yeah. Did you tell Agent Sutherland about smuggling marijuana? Yes, I did. I would have. I'm sorry, yeah. You told him about smuggling marijuana. Yeah, so it was marijuana and it was cocaine, but like I say, I don't recall a specific marijuana time. But there probably a couple of times that it was. And I don't know how much detail I went into with Special Agent Sutherland because a lot of it was with the trooper's drug obeyed trooper that handled drugs. I laid it all out for them. You told the prosecutors here and Agent Sutherland about the Hells Angels, yes. You work for them, yes. You told them you were a prospect for the Hells Angels, yes. Tell the jury what a prospect is. A prospect is someone before you join a biker club. You do what's called prospecting, and it's like the first initial stage of joining, and then you become a member after that. So what do you have to do to become a member? You tried to become a member then, right? I wanted to be at one point. I was looking into it, and so that's the qualification for a prospect to be a member. What do you have to do? You've got to be around them for a year or so, and you were running drugs for them for a year and a half, right? Yes. And you told the prosecutors at the special agent that you brought drugs to the Hells Angels clubhouse here in Anchorage. Do you remember that? Yes. And would you have to be a member or prospect to get into that clubhouse? No, you don't. You don't. No. You just have to be a drug smuggler for them. You can be. Their friends go in and out all the time. And you did that for a year and a half when you made roughly, yes, because you delivered drugs here in Anchorage at the Hells Angel Clubhouse. I'm going to stop here at page 151. All right, page 151, continuing. Hells Angels Clubhouse, and you also delivered drugs in Fairbanks, right? I don't specifically remember a time when I brought them into the clubhouse. I would usually meet them out of town a ways, and they would unload them. When you were at the clubhouse, did you see some suppressed weapons? No, sir, I didn't. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Did you tell the prosecutors and the agent that you saw suppressed weapons laying around the Hells Angels clubhouse? I don't recall that. Let me show you. This is Mr. Kurtner. I'm not offering this as an exhibit, Your Honor, just to display this to the attorneys and to Mr. Olson. Bates number FED 12606. Could you show that to Mr. Olson? Do you see that? No, it isn't up yet. If I could approach the witness, Your Honor. Mr. Kurtner. Mr. Olson, can you read the whole paragraph to yourself or just the third paragraph? I just want to ask about the last sentence in the third paragraph, if it refreshes your recollection. Okay, yes. Do you remember now if you told the prosecutors and the agent that you saw suppressed weapons at the Hells Angel clubhouse in Anchorage? If that's an official report, I obviously told them, but I don't recall telling them that. If you told them that, and this is accurate, then did you lie about that to embellish your prospects as a paid informant? No, sir, I didn't. You remembered it then, and you don't remember it now? Yes. Did you also say that you delivered drugs to the Boondockers in Salcha? Yes. You did that. You did tell them that? The Boondocks was a closed-up restaurant, roadhouse bar. We would meet at the parking lot. Okay, and that's in Fairbanks, Salcha? We're right outside Fairbanks, about 40 miles, yes. Okay, so I should have asked you Salcha when I asked you if you delivered drugs to Fairbanks too, right? Yes. Salcha, right? Fairbanks is wrong? Yes. Didn't you also tell them at times you would bring up as much as 2 kilograms of drugs in a load on your truck? I don't remember telling them that. Mr. Kurtner, okay, can we go to the Bates stamped number FED 000119987? Miss Hayden again, please. Let's start with 11987. Do you see that? I can't read it. Can you make it bigger? Can you read that? Yes, yes. Okay, and that's where you mentioned Boondockers Restaurant? Yes. I don't know why they call it Boondockers. It's Boondocks. Boondocks, yes. Okay, and this is where I mentioned the first couple of loads having a package and a sleeper in your truck? Oh, yes. Okay, let's go to the paragraph above that and at the end of that. You tell them that we're picking up pounds of marijuana in Princeton, George. Do you remember that? Yes. Let's go to page 116 or 986, the page before that. Do you see the first full paragraph? You need to enlarge it again. There you go. This is when you were driving for Country Foods. Yes, and you smoked marijuana at the time, and that's when you started using speed or go fast. Yes. Now, you also referred to that as crank, haven't you? Yes. This is the word for it back then. Go fast was the word for it back then. It's also known as crank. Yes. What's crank? That's the same as go fast. Speed. Okay, we're having some computer problems. I'm going to pick up on page 155. Speed, yes, like meth. It's not as near as potent as meth. And you, I think, testified that you use this go fast once in a while? Yes. What do you mean by that? I'd use it to stay awake. I could use it take it down in Washington and drive straight through. So you would take crank every time you drove all the way up to Alaska? Not every time, no. Not every time? Not every time. Let's go to page 11988. Let's go to the top paragraph. Do you see there where you were describing packages that could have contained a kilogram or two based on their weight? Let me read it here real quick, okay? And so do you remember up to 2 kilograms, right? Saying that? It could have been, yeah, like I said before, it could have been kilograms of cocaine or kilograms of marijuana. Either or, like I say, I don't know exactly what was in the packages. Do you have any idea what the penalties would be for smuggling that much marijuana or cocaine through Canada? Objection, relevance. No, he may answer. It would be severe. I mean, I don't know, 20 years probably. Now, so eventually you got out of, let me go back about the trucker. As a truck driver, now you know Lonnie Vernon was a truck driver too, right? Yeah, he was. That's something you guys had in common, yeah. You talked a lot about that? I don't know about a lot. We did talk about it. I think we heard some testimony about him being a trucker for 36 years and never got a ticket, except for maybe weight. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. And when did you first meet Mr. Vernon? It was probably 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 2002, roughly that time frame. You were both? Yeah, truck drivers then. Yeah, so you eventually got out of the trucking business and went into the septic business scam. Septic system scam, and I think we've been talking about. The septic's the dirt work business, excavation business. You wouldn't call it a scam, or would you? I scammed a few people, yes. Now, when you were trucking, you owned that truck, right? Yes, I did. And what? And that was, it was eventually repossessed. Yes, it was. And then you went, that's when you went, one of them, pardon, one of them. I had several trucks. Okay, so your truck was repossessed, and that's when you went into the septic thing. And from that, was that your first felony? Hold on just a second. Okay, somebody just pulled up in front of the house. But I don't think it's a bad guy, so all right, page 158. Yes, it was. And you owed, how much restitution did you owe on that altogether? It's like $36,000, I believe, and I'm not sure on the exact dollar amount. And that was in 2002, 2003 or so. 2002 is when I got arrested. It took about 2 years to resolve it. So restitution order was issued in 2004. Now, when you moved up to Fairbanks around 2004, yes, and became a drug dealer, not right at that time, no. How long did it take for you to start being a drug dealer? I wasn't a drug dealer. I'm sorry, I wasn't a drug dealer. Didn't you testify you bought drugs in Talkeetna and sold them in Fairbanks? Yes. That's not dealing drugs? In my mind, when I think of a drug dealer, I think about on the street selling drugs. Okay, but you made $70,000 to $80,000 a year doing that. Yes, that's not drug dealing. Drug wholesaling. Drug wholesaling. Now, when you were smuggling drugs, you made what, 70 to 90,000? Roughly that, yes. Okay. And I never kept track of dollar amounts, but that's when it all caught up with you, and that's you decided to not be an outlaw anymore. It was before I had gotten arrested. Which time? The second time. Now the second time was for the Bobcat? Yes. Now if you already had a felony and then you got this new felony, do you know what presumptive sentencing is in Alaska? I'm not sure. You'll have to explain it. Well, it's like when you already had a prior felony conviction, if you get a new one, there's like a mandatory prison term. Did you ever hear about that? Oh, okay, yes. Yeah. So what was the mandatory presumptive term for you on your second felony? I'm not sure. 2 years, 3 years, 6 years? I'm not sure. But you got probation on that, right? On the first one? Affirmative. Yeah, and I was on probation. Now on the Bobcat, though, you lied numerous times on that. Yes, I did. To the troopers, yes. You told us how many times you lied to the troopers, right? Yes, but that was before you decided to go back to your family values? That was right in the middle of it. And then the house logs, that was your third felony? That wasn't, I wasn't. You weren't, I'm sorry, convicted. You weren't convicted? No, you were able to get that dismissed. That was the one that they charged me after I was in jail. And if it would have been a third felony, you would have even gotten more presumptive time, right? I assume so, yes. Do you know how much? No, sir, I don't. Okay, well, let's talk about your pay as a paid informant. I didn't quite get it all. The troopers gave you an apartment for 4 months, and you started with the troopers and DEA. Yes, they did. And they also gave you $3,000 in expenses. Yes, it was. And on top of the free apartment, I'm asking you. I don't know. Yes, I'm trying to think. I don't know quite how they figured all that, because I never actually got cash from the troopers for spending cash. They just took care of all the bills, so I don't know that if that $3,000 figured in with the expenses or if that was a total sum of the separate. I'm not real sure. I can't answer that. And well, you said $3,000, I think. Yeah, that's the total amount that the troopers gave me. And the FBI gave you $77,000. Yes, that's correct. And this is in like a year period. That was over the course of the investigation, except for $60,000 of the FBI's money came when to move all of our household stuff and my wife and kids out. It was $60,000 lump sum payment. So the $17,000 was paid over the course of the investigation. So your services as a paid informant lasted about a year. The services you provided to the troopers, DA, FBI. Yes. So they still owe you for the services rendered in your mind, right? They haven't promised it in writing anywhere, but you expect it, right? I'm hoping to get it. Yes. How much do you hope to get? To be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't. If you were making the opening offer, what would you ask for? Well, I'd go high if I was making an opening offer. What's high? $300,000. Okay, so you made $70,000 to $90,000 as a drug smuggler a year. Yes, and you made, I think, $60,000 to $80,000 as a drug dealer. Yeah, I mean drug wholesaler. Yeah. And you're making more money, or hope to make more money, as a paid informant than a drug dealer or as a drug smuggler, or in any business you had. Is that right? I hope to. And part of your hope how you got involved in this case is you volunteered to work on Schaefer Cox. Is that right? On the case, yes. On the case, his name was out there. You thought he would be a good target? No, that's not correct. Okay, you thought he's probably worth $300,000 for a year's services? No, because when I started the investigation, it was all to avoid my jail time. I had no idea I had the potential to get paid any money until about 2 months before the takedown, when the FBI came to me and told me that this is getting serious enough that we're going to have to move you out and put you into witness protection. And at that point, they let me know that they would pay my expenses, and the money issue came up. So up until that point, there was no thought in my mind of getting paid. It was all just to avoid jail time. Now, I'm sorry, I forgot that. Yeah, it's just the money that you had hopes for. You also got tremendous benefit in your criminal case. You didn't go to prison, right? Yes. I should add that. Yes. And also restitution. Was there any thought, any hopes that they'll help you with restitution? There's no chance that they're going to help me with the restitution unless they pay you $300,000. If they pay me $300,000, that's for my services, and then I did up through this investigation. What I do with that money is up to me. Would you give it to these poor people that you ripped off, or do you think, or would you keep it all? No, I plan on paying my restitution and getting my taxes caught up if I get the money. Now, I think you testified today that while you were working as a paid informant, that nobody ever told you that you were not following directions. Is that the word you used? I don't know if it was following directions. I think it was. I don't remember his exact words, but I had not messed up. I don't know. Okay, that you hadn't messed up. Yes. That you were being truthful with everybody. Yes. And you also testified that when you were with 241 first came up, it was 1 for 1, and then you offered 5 for 1. That's correct. And that's going over the top, wasn't it? Didn't Agent Sutherland say you're not following directions? You're going too far? Is that? No. How did you describe it? You told us about that the other day. How did you describe his reaction when you suggested 5 for 1? Do you remember what you told us about that? There were several times that he had to remind me to not instigate stuff, offer suggestions, just to let it come to me, I was reminded of that quite a bit. And do you know FBI agent Lisa Locastle? I don't recognize that name. Works for the FBI Scrocky Foundation. He may answer. I know what it is. If he knows. Mr. Kurtner, did Agent Sutherland ever indicate to you that other agents indicated to him that your information hasn't always been 100% accurate? No, he never. He never told you that? He never told me that I recall. Okay. We'll save that for Agent Sutherland then. Is that a question, Mr. Kurtner? No, I'm moving on. Then it shouldn't be asked. It wasn't a question. Freaking Scrocky, man. How about conversations that weren't recorded? Did you mess up on that? On those? No, I didn't. Not that I recall. How many times were you were supposed to record everything? I did record everything. Well, let's talk about February 2nd. There was a meeting on February 2nd, 2010, where you had a recorder, and it was later discovered there was no recording. Do you remember that? This was at Mr. Thessing's residence. I don't recall, no. Do you want to look at 1023? That's on the bait stamp Fed 2746. Okay. The very first paragraph. You can read that first paragraph to yourself. You now remember that this was a meeting February 2nd? Counsel, I'm sorry. We need to see it's on the screen, upper section. Oh. We need to see the whole section of, okay, the 1023. Let's go to the top section then. Okay, thank you. This is, you know the 1023s, right? Yes, I do. This is the one by Agent Sutherland, right? Yes. And the CHS, that's confidential human source, right? Yes. That's you? Yes. And so now do you remember that was recording? That was a meeting that was not recorded? It says that the recording had been made, or this information is based off the debrief of the CHS. It was later discovered that no recording had been made during this meeting. You don't remember that? No, I don't. Okay, I wasn't told about the meetings, not the recorder not working. So you might debrief with the agent and then tell them that you would give them the recording and there would be no recording, and they didn't tell you about that. I would give him the recording device, and then debrief him, tell him everything that went on. Do you remember, did you record the meeting on February 7th, 2010, the Super Bowl party? Yes, I did. That was recorded. Whether it was ultimately recorded or not, I don't know, but I followed my instructions and then turned on the recorder. You also talked about meeting with the Vernons on February 17th. No, I'm sorry, that was on March 3rd, early March. I don't recall. You talked about that day. I don't remember. Was there an exhibit of that recording? I don't recall specifically which one you're talking about. Today you talked about a meeting on March the 3rd, early March, with the Vernons. You talked about that today? Okay, yes, we had lots of meetings in early March. Was there an exhibit that played a recording from the meeting that was in trial here? You're going to have to get more specific. Okay, you testified you met with the Vernons on early March, and you hear a tape of that conversation today. There was recordings of conversations from early March, yes. Okay, now, so during the course of your being a paid informant, you recorded over 100 hours, is that correct? Yes. We've only heard 5 hours in the courtroom, right? Yes. Now we're out of action because of other cases. You were working as a paid informant between August and October. Yes. But before that, you described an email that was Coleman Barney, August 23rd, 2010. Could you see Exhibit 471? It's been admitted into evidence. And this is the email about training. You need to blow it up. Well, can you read that now? Yes. And it's about a seminar, Mr. Vernon, on that email. I don't see his name. Whether one of those email addresses are his or not, I don't know, but I don't see his name. Okay, now then you became involved and you got back after the other cases you worked in September, October, I suppose. Then you became back involved in November 2010 with the training. Remember that exit crew? Yes. Okay, so you were supposed to be involved in training as an exit crew, but that never happened, right? That's correct. And there was supposed to be a practice at UAF, yes, and that never happened. We showed up, but the actual training didn't happen. You were also supposed to you said you were supposed to give an inventory of your weapons. Yes, and that never happened. No, it didn't. Okay, there was a meeting November 19th with the Anchorage sovereign citizens in Fairbanks. Remember that? November 19th, affirmative. Where was the meeting at? In Fairbanks? Yeah, but what location in Fairbanks? I don't remember now. I think it was at a meeting where the folks came up. Maybe it was at Denny's. It was folks in Anchorage who were the sovereign citizens. Because there were several meetings with the sovereign citizens, so you're going to have to get specific. Well, November 19, 2010, you don't recall that? Like I said earlier dates, I'm not good with dates in this. Well, Lonnie Vernon wasn't there. You remember that, don't you? There was one meeting at Schaefer's house with the Anchorage sovereign citizens that Lonnie wasn't there, but he was at the Carlson Center and the Denny's ones. Now, you also described filling some IRS forms on February 14th when Schaefer was supposed to be in court. Yeah, you filed some IRS forms then, right? Yes, I did. And Mr. Thessing did? Yeah. And Mr. Barney did? Yeah. And Lonnie Vernon didn't? I don't know if he did or not. I didn't see it. You were at the common law trial? Yeah. And you saw the verdict that was formed that was in an exhibit in this trial, right? Yeah. And Lonnie Vernon did not sign it as a juror on the verdict form, right? We can pull it up and look again. Ms. Kurtner, 472002, if you can enlarge it, and tell me if you see Mr. Vernon's name on there. Mr. Kurtner, I think you testified that this was a verdict form from the common law trial. Yeah, you can continue to scroll up. Can you continue to scroll up? We'll scroll down until you can, or scroll down. See Mr. Vernon's signature? Now, I don't see his signature on that. No, I don't see his signature on that. Now, Mr. Olson, you were on the command staff, correct? And that, not at this point, eventually, yes. Mr. Vernon, he never was on the command staff. Yes, he was, because command staff had to be command staff to go to the militia conference in Anchorage. Well, you remember the command staff meeting at Mr. Thessing's in February, Mr. Vernon wasn't there? No, he wasn't present at that particular command staff meeting. And that's when you guys talked about 2-for-1, 5-for-1. He wasn't there? That's correct. He wasn't there anytime there was a meeting about 2-for-1. He wasn't at that particular one, but I don't recall any other meeting that he was at. But do you remember helping Mr. Vernon trying to get a job? He wasn't working at that time, right? Yes, that's correct. He would be available if anybody with militia needed him to do something on the run or errand, right? I guess so, yes. Did you try to help him find a job, a truck driving job? I didn't help him find a job. I'd have him discuss him coming and driving my truck. Who's Chad? Chad? Is there a guy named Chad that you were telling Lonnie Vernon that he might give him some work driving a truck? You don't remember that at all? I don't recall that, no. Do you remember talking to anybody about possibly getting some employment from Mr. Vernon? You don't remember any of that? I may have in the course of conversations with him at the time. I might have known of a truck driving job that I might have told him about. I don't recall a specific time. Okay, let's talk about the convention. Now, Mr. Vernon, he was recruited to go to that convention on behalf of the militia the day you guys left, wasn't it? It was either the day or the day before. It was shortly before, yeah. Now, where you had discussed this with Mr. Cox in January about going down there. Is that correct? January 20th, 2010? Yeah, later, January, yeah. January 20th, I don't remember a specific date, but Mr. Cox said he might be able to go because might not be able to go because his wife was pregnant. Did he tell you? Do you remember him telling you that? Yeah. And then Mr. Barney was going to go for him. Do you remember that plan? Yeah. And then and then you're elevated to the command staff. Not at the time, but the morning we left, I was promoted. Okay, so the morning of February the 4th, 2011, yes, you got a phone call that the other majors couldn't go. I don't specifically remember the phone call, but they couldn't go. Mr. Cox couldn't go, Mr. Barney couldn't go, no other majors could go. Do you remember that? Yeah. And that's why Mr. Cox asked you and Lonnie to go. Lonnie Vernon? Yeah, I was going to go all along, but that's when he asked Lonnie to go. At the last minute, and then Mr. Cox briefed you on what you and Mr. Vernon's duties were to be down there, right? Yeah, that's correct. And you guys were going to get a free hotel room, yeah. Mr. Fulton was going to pay for that. Yeah, and Mr. Fulton brought you dinners? Yeah, he did. Yeah. Did he buy drinks? Yeah. And at that time, I think you testified Mr. Cox didn't want to go, didn't want Mr. Vernon to go. Originally, he didn't, yeah. But he always wanted you to go for him, right, and represent the militia from January. I was going to go with him, tag along with him. It wasn't that I was going to represent them until Mr. Cox backed out. Okay, now the drive, I think you testified the drive from Fairbanks to Alaska took you 4 to 5 hours, yeah. It's 350 miles, isn't it? Yeah, I guess so. It's more like 6 or 7 hours. It's you can drive right along. Okay, so it usually takes me about 5 hours. Averaging you driving a speed limited or averaging over 70. 65, 70, yeah. But it was all recorded. The whole trip was recorded, wasn't it? Yes, it was. We only heard maybe, I think, less than 2 minutes of the trip that was recorded. Is that what it was? Uh-huh. And the one thing we did hear was Mr. Vernon talking about somebody who worked for Mr. Barney and his buddy. All they do is take microwaves and make laser-guided rockets of them. Do you remember this? I don't remember if it was rockets, but some kind of laser-guided. It's bomb stuff. Yeah, it's in our transcript that we played here, yeah. You heard that, and did you believe Mr. Vernon when he told you that? Yeah, I believe if someone knows how to take a microwave apart, you can probably come up with some pretty nifty gadgets if they know how to build them or rebuild them. Take the parts and pieces and make something out of it. A laser-guided rocket, really? I don't know about. Okay, a laser-guided rocket, but you had a lot of discussion all the way down to Anchorage, right? Yes, we did. Did you guys discuss aliens? I believe that was discussed. What was discussed about aliens? I don't recall specifics. Do you recall discussing a tunnel from New York to New Mexico? Yes, I do. What was that discussion about? I don't remember the specifics about it. Who built the tunnel from New York to New Mexico? Lonnie believed that the government did. Why? What was it for? For transport? Transport of what? I don't recall exactly who was getting transported through it. And how long would it take to transport somebody from New York to New Mexico? I don't remember the specific time he said, but it was quick. Like a matter of seconds, yes. And do you believe him on that? No, I don't. I do not believe that. Did you guys talk about the Chinese government being involved in the U.S.? I don't recall specifics about that. Chinese military in Idaho? Do you remember anything about that being discussed? I don't recall. How about the government being in the business of selling children? Do you remember anything about that? He talked about that on a couple of different occasions, but I can't specifically recall on the way down. The government going to Mars is a secret. Instead of the moon, they went to Mars. Do you remember anything like that? I don't recall that in particular, but you guys talked about a lot of things all the way from Anchorage to Fairbanks in those 4 or 5 hours, right? Yeah, we did. Okay, and you believed everything that was discussed? No, sir, I didn't. Now, at this convention, it's about time. Cut and roll. We take a break, council. Let's leave for the 15 minutes. You may be excused. The matter's in recess for 15 minutes. All rise. It's dishonorable. The court, the dishonorable United States District Court is again in session. Please be seated. Bring the jury in. All right, Mr. Kurtner. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Olson, I just forgot to ask you one question about Hell's Angels. Do you have a Hell's Angels tattoo? No, I don't. Did you at some point? No. You never had a tattoo? No, I didn't. Did you tell Mr. Scrocky, Mr. Lamoureux, Mr. Bottini that you had a Hell's Angels tattoo at some point? No, not a Hell's Angels tattoo. An HA tattoo? It's an HA tattoo, yes. What's H? A prospect tattoo, not the actual one, because you've got to be a member to get the actual Hell's Angels tattoo. What does HA stand for? That's Hell's Angel, but it's a prospect tattoo. Okay, and you have that tattoo now still? Yes, I do. Well, let's go to the convention here in Anchorage, February 5th, 2011. Bill Fulton was going to be there, obviously, yes. And he's somewhat of a big name in the militia movement. I guess the Alaska militia. Norm Olson is a big name in the militia movement. Yes, he is. Okay, and there's other militia leaders here from around the state, yes. And you and Mr. Vernon, yes. Do you guys feel that Mr. Vernon was was out of his league? Do you guys feel Mr. Vernon was sort of out of his league with these guys? No. He tried to impress him, do you think? No, I don't think so. Now, we saw a number of videos with you and Mr. Fulton and Mr. Vernon, and you used the phrase gun talk, right? Yeah, I've used that phrase throughout this. Yeah, that was a lot of gun talk going on in those hotel rooms, right? I don't know if I'd say a lot, but they were talking about guns. I mean, you're a gun enthusiast. No, sir, I'm not. You're not. You don't know a lot about firearms. You used to having assault rifles. I used to be an enthusiast, but not now. But you've been around gun enthusiasts. They love to talk about different guns, different firepower, a lot of gun talk. You've probably been exposed to in your life some gun talk, yeah. Okay, and you guys are all drinking, all three of you? Yeah, we were drinking beer. Yeah, you can see a bottle of wine. Yes, Mr. Fulton was drinking wine. And there was whiskey. I don't recall whiskey, but I'm not saying there wasn't. I just don't remember. I don't drink whiskey, so I wasn't paying attention to. You were just drinking? To whiskey? Beer. I was just drinking beer, yeah. Mr. Fulton had a bottle of whiskey there too, right in the hotel room. I don't know. And during these discussions with you and Mr. Fulton and Mr. Vernon, you knew it was going to be recorded, correct? Yeah. Mr. Fulton knew it was going to be recorded. Speculation sustained. All right. Mr. Vernon didn't know that it was being recorded? No, he didn't. Now, during this gun talk, you talked about a silencer. There was a silencer discussed, right? Yes, that's correct. And Mr. Fulton said, if you want to buy a silencer, I need to know the thread and the barrel size. Is that correct? The barrel twist? Barrel twist. Okay, Mr. Vernon never talked about any kind of barrel twist at all, right, during the meeting, those meetings? I don't recall if Mr. Vernon was talking. I know where we talking about it, but I don't remember specifically if Mr. Vernon did or did not. You were talking about grenade bodies. Mr. Fulton was talking about grenade bodies, right? Didn't he say that several times, bodies? Yes, we were talking about grenade bodies. Grenade bodies are legal to buy. Yes, they are. You were talking about when Mr. Fulton asked Mr. Vernon, well, how many grenade bodies? And Mr. Vernon said one. Remember that? No, sir, I don't remember that. You don't remember that on the tape we heard? No, not that specific, no. Okay, didn't Mr. Fulton say 50, 500? Objection, hearsay. That was on the tape that we heard. Overruled. Do you remember that? I don't remember the grenade talk, but I don't remember specific. You guys number? Okay, well, we heard it. There's a talk about a .50 caliber and a .50, yes. A .50 caliber rifle is legal, right? As long as it's not fully automatic. Yeah, exactly. Yes, now during that gun talk, though, there was never an agreement to buy. There was never a price on any of this stuff, right, discussed? I remember discussing prices. Was there any kind of agreement as to price? I don't remember a specific agreement, handshake agreement, but we definitely were talking dollars, talking prices. There was no agreement as to when that they might be delivered. Not an agreement as to when they might be delivered. There was a time frame that there was no agreement as to how they were going to be delivered, not that I recall. And during one of those conversations early on, Mr. Cox called. Do you remember it? That it was on the tape. We actually called him. I'm sorry, you called him. Yes, and he told Mr. Fulton. You remember him saying, "Say your piece and then bring me your message back to me." Do you remember that? Yes, I do. So he was asking Fulton to say what he had to say, and then you and Mr. Vernon would be the messengers and take that back to Fairbanks, correct? Yes, that'd be correct. That was the first meeting. Then the second meeting, you guys were drinking more gun talk, right? Yeah, the second night. There was gun talk. I don't remember drinking the second night. I don't recall that. There was a lot of laughing. You guys were laughing at Mr. Vernon a number of times. Do you remember that? We weren't laughing at him. We were laughing with him. And when you got back to Fairbanks, you debriefed. You spoke with Mr. Cox, and where did Mr. Vernon go? He went. His wife picked him up, and I assume he went back home. He went home with his wife. Okay. Now it was your testimony on some of the tapes that we heard in the February 15th is when Mr. Cox went to Vernon's home, correct? The night before he was supposed to be in the court, February 14th. I'm not sure he went out there the exact time that he went out there. And do you remember Mr. Vernon feeling that he disagreed with Mr. Cox? He thought Mr. Cox should go to the court appearance. Do you remember that? No, I don't remember that. They had several agreements about the court case. Do you disagree? They had several disagreements about the court case. Do you remember? You don't? No, I don't. Do you remember Mr. Vernon saying to you a few days later that when you met at the food factory that he wanted Mr. Cox to move out of this place? Do you remember that? Yes, I do. Okay, and that's when you were bringing up this hit list. Do you remember the conversation about the hit list that we heard? I remember a conversation about the hit list, specific times. I don't remember, but there were conversation with Mr. Vernon about the hit list, yes. Do you recall that Mr. Vernon, when you first brought this on February 17th, he didn't know what you were talking about? I don't recall that, no. Kurtner, we listened to it once before. We can play back the recording. And do you have your transcripts available? I don't have transcripts. It's a short recording. I just want you to listen to this and ask you a few questions. Can we listen to Exhibit 2301? Where is that at here in the transcripts? Under 23 transcripts, it'll be the first couple of pages. Play the audio. Mr. Olson, do you remember that conversation? Yes, I do. And you brought up the list? Yes. Mr. Vernon didn't know what was on the list. He didn't know at first, but then when I reminded him, he said, "Oh yeah." When you were describing what was supposed to be on the list, right, in that recording, that was your voice. I didn't describe what was on the list. No, not before he said, "Oh yeah." Now there were some discussions of a cache in that conversation. In the same conversation? Affirmative. Play the audio. So remember you were asking about the cache, right? Yes, I was. And Mr. Vernon says, "I don't know where it's at." Do you remember that? Yeah, and no, now somewhere in your testimony, you mentioned a cache at Vernon's house. Yeah, and you told Agent Sutherland that you were at Mr. Vernon's house and you did not see a weapons cache. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. You did not see a weapons cache the first time you went out to the Vernon's home? I seen a lot of weapons, but I didn't see an actual cache. There's also been discussion we heard about a bomb in a tree. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. Do you remember that you know that? Do you know what tannerite is? I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is, no. What have you heard about it? You can make bombs out of it. Is that what you heard? That's what I heard, yeah. Isn't it for target practice? I don't know. I've heard it is. You can make bombs out of it. Isn't tannerite a target where you hit it with a high velocity bullet and it goes poof? I don't know, sir. Is it possible that you guys were talking about the tannerite that was used at the training with the weapons that Mr. Clark told us about? I don't know who Mr. Clark is. Now, I think you said that this recording at the food factory, there was a recording there, but did you meet the same day with Mr. Vernon? I think you said McDonald's, or was it AFC, KFC, or A&W? A&W, KFC, they're together in the same building, and that when the discussion about the shooting cell towers, that was discussion about shooting out cell towers, yes, and power poles for those types of things on poles. Do you remember that? Transformers, and that was not recorded, was it? Yeah, it was. It was recorded, yes. Okay, and whether the recording made it, I don't know, but I recorded the conversation. I don't remember hearing that recording, but well, if you think it is recorded, we'll leave it at that. So it was right after that, February 19th. That's when you described Mr. Vernon blowing up. Remember that? Mr. Cox, he was fed up with Mr. Cox. Do you remember that conversation? Up in the attic at Coleman Barney's house. I remember what it was, but it was very animated. Remember, it was a 2-hour meeting, but yes, it was. The purpose was to leave Mr. Vernon vent, and he was fed up, and he said, "I'm done with you." Remember that? Yes. Statement. Yes, I do. And after February the 19th, you were never at a meeting with Mr. Cox and Mr. Vernon together. I don't recall one right off the top of my head, but there may have been that I'm forgetting about. Now, you talked a little bit about the Alaska Assembly Post, yes, and Mr. Vernon was involved with that, right? Yes, he was. You were on a conference call with the Alaska Assembly Post on December 29, 2010. Do you remember that? I don't remember the specific date, but I was on several conference calls with the Assembly Post there again, and the dates all run together. Can we look at a discovery of 2717? Can you blow up just the top of it? Do you see this 231023? I'm sorry, 1023. Yes, I do. Okay, and that was the conference call. Mr. Kerner, can you go down a little bit? Yeah, I can't see the lower part. Keep going. And do you remember that call that we were on the part of? Mr. Cox was there, his wife was there, his child was there, and nobody else was present. Yes, I do. You were there. Yes, Mr. Vernon was not correct. Yes, that's correct. And then January 10th, that would be Discovery 2721, the top part, please. That was a conference call at Mr. Cox's residence. You had a recording device for that. Mr. Vernon wasn't there. Yes, that's correct. That's at Discovery 2724. Conference calls with members of Alaska Assembly Post government. Yes, you were there. You're going to have to scroll down some so I can make sure that I was there on that date. This is, you recorded it. Yes, I was. So you were there, Mr. Cox. You were there, Mr. Thessing there. Yeah, on that call, yeah. Mr. Vernon was not. I don't recall him being there, no. On January the 14th, I really need to look at the whole 1023 rather than just top portion so I can, okay, get a bearing of what. We'll do that. Can you blow it up so we can read it? This is an Assembly Post conference call, right? And you participated, yes. Mr. Kurtner, show him the whole thing and see if there's any mention of Mr. Vernon. That's page 1. A lot of these conference calls were over the phone. I wasn't a meeting where a bunch of guys got together and then just all listened in. So the Vernons would have been participating, and I didn't know because you didn't identify yourself when you were called in every time. Let's talk about a 241 a little bit. The first time that was ever mentioned, we talked about February 12, 2011 at Mr. Thessing's bus. Is that right? Yes. And Mr. Vernon, as you said, was never a meeting when 241 was discussed when you were there. Is that correct? I don't believe I said he wasn't at a meeting when 241 was discussed. He wasn't at a particular meeting. He wasn't at that particular meeting where Schaefer Cox introduced 241 to us. But I don't recall whether he was at whether It was at another specific meeting where 2-for-1 was discussed. Well, there was a conversation with you and Mr. Vernon. It was Exhibit 2204, where you mentioned the 2-for-1 code. Do you remember that? I don't. Let me look at the. Do you want to look at your notes? Definitely. I'm going to ask you about page 105 on that exhibit. Why don't you read the whole thing? Can you blow it up, please? Mr. Kurtner, down further, Bruce, the whole thing. Do you remember that conversation? I don't specifically remember the conversation, but by the piece I'm looking at here, I don't see where Mr. Vernon says he doesn't know what 2-for-1 is. Maybe if we played the recording, we could hear where Mr. Vernon says that. Okay, play the audio. Do you remember that part of the conversation? I don't remember it, but I just listened to it. Okay, and so you mentioned 2-for-1 code, and Mr. Vernon said, how about Brazo? He an old movie? From what I heard, I don't even know if he heard 2-for-1 because he interrupted me before I was even done. But there's nothing there that says he didn't know what I was talking about. He went off into discussing a movie that he had seen. Now, we heard the conversation in these exhibits. Exhibit there was recorded in Broadway property on February 21st. Mr. Vernon wasn't there. Okay, yes, there was a meeting at Barney's on February 22nd. Mr. Vernon wasn't there. What specific meeting was that? This was a meeting, that Exhibit 27. It's a meeting at Coleman Barney's on February the 22nd. There were several meetings, yes, that the Lonnie Vernon was part of. I don't remember that specific one, but I do know there were several that he wasn't part of. Yes, February. There again, I have to look at something before I answer. Yes, he wasn't there. I need to refresh my mind on that specific date. March 1st, same thing. Meetings at Barney's, basically, Mr. Vernon was not involved with Mr. Cox much after he blew up at him. Is that correct? I don't think it changed any more so than it always was. I remember a specific time I was sitting at a hometown cafe with Lonnie Vernon, and Coleman called up and wanted Lonnie to stop by because they needed to talk to him. It was a short amount of time there, so if he went a few days without seeing Mr. Cox, I don't think that was normal. Now let's talk about when Mr. Vernon got arrested. Well, before we got there was a call. You called him February 21st about the silencer. Do you remember that? Called Mr. Vernon? Affirmative. Was that the night before? February 21st? That would be a couple of weeks before. I'd have to refresh my mind with the exact conversation. That was about more than 2 weeks after you were at the convention in Anchorage, February 21st. You were there at 5th and 6th. Okay. If it's the conversation I'm thinking about, it's the one where I let him know that Bill had called. Yeah, and right. And his response was, holy cow. Yes, he was. He was surprised or excited. I personally took it to be excited. There was no discussion of a price at that conversation, though. There again, I'd have to look at the transcripts. I don't recall for sure. I can't answer that for yes or no. And in fact, you made a comment a couple of bit later in Exhibit 28. You said Bill couldn't get a hold of Lonnie, but he couldn't return his calls. Do you remember saying that? Plaintiff's Exhibit 28 admitted. Answer: If we could play the recording, I would remember. Let me stop there at page 201. All right, let's start with page 201. I would remember. Well, look at Exhibit 28. Do you have that in front of you? It is. Is it? You have all the trial transcripts? Yes. Let me ask you, Mr. Olson, do you remember making a comment that Fulton told you that Lonnie Vernon wouldn't return his calls? I don't remember that specific comment. Okay, now at the time you got the silencer and you gave it to Mr. Vernon, he wasn't expecting a gun with that, was he? Speculation. Question: didn't he seem surprised that there was a silencer and a gun? I don't recall. If I know with Coleman and Schaefer I discussed match sets, but I don't recall with Lonnie. And he was surprised at the grenades, that they were live grenades. They weren't. Didn't he ask if they were flash bombs or smoke bombs, and that he was? Remember that? Yes, I do. Yeah. Now there was a discussion about an address on 7th Avenue. Yeah. Now, the night before, you called Mr. Vernon, you said, we can meet tomorrow, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Do you remember that? Yeah, I do. And one of the birds was to go to this lawyer at this address, is that right? I don't remember if that was, no, it wasn't the lawyer because we had gone to the lawyer before. That address that they had given me the Scrocky objection. I need to speak to counsel for a minute. Side conversing. 751 7th Avenue. Do you know what that address is for? I do, yes. Law offices in Fairbanks, right? I know that it was an address that they gave that Lonnie and his wife gave to me. Weren't you going to see a lawyer about your felony conviction? See if you could do something with that to have it taken care of. I don't recall if that was the address or the address of what they were talking about, but that was something you discussed with Mr. Vernon about seeing. We had discussed that. Okay. Now, we saw a video of when Mr. Vernon got arrested. Could you see the last 20 seconds of that video? Can I show you that? Sure. Defense Exhibit LVA. Scrocky, we have a relevance objection. Mr. Kurtner. Your Honor, it's 20 seconds. It's just the part of the video for completion. The court, is this part of what was already in evidence? Yes. No, it's additionally, it's after. It's after we conclude the tape or the recording that we played. We'll identify it. It's been already marked, I think, as Exhibit 40, the tape arrest of Mr. Kurtner. It's Government Exhibit 40. We've seen, I think, 5 minutes of the tape, Your Honor. This is the last 20 seconds of the tape we've already seen. We still object. It just goes into the arrest of the Vernons. That's all it does. It's not part of the exhibit that we offered. I'd like to know why he's offering it. I'm offering it because in spite of all this talk about what would happen if law enforcement was to make an arrest, Mr. Vernon was completely compliant and non-threatening and non-violent and no resistance. You mark this as LV-A. Kurtner, yes. LV-A may be admitted. Thank you. If we could play that. And Judge, could I pass out transcripts to the parties and to the jury? Sure. Play the audio, play the video. If you could turn the lights back up, yes. Unidentified juror. Excuse me, Your Honor, we didn't receive these prior to the video. I'm sorry. Unidentified jury being played. The court, louder please. We didn't receive these prior to the video started. Oh, I'm sorry. Unidentified jury weren't able to follow along. Do you want to play it again? Go ahead. Let's play it again. Okay, they play it again. Okay, Mr. Olson, you were there. Mr. Vernon didn't resist his arrest at all, did he? I was on the ground at this point, so I did not witness any of that. I was out the door and my nose in the snowbank. Okay, Kurtner, thank you. No further questions. Scrocky, all set, Mr. Olson? Affirmative. Mr. Dooley asked you some questions, Mr. Olson, with respect to the meeting at the Esther cabin with Mr. Barney and Mr. Cox in early March? Yes. Do you recall these questions? Yes, I do. You were asked if Mr. Barney was there? Yes. I want to have you turn to your attention to Exhibit 29-05. I'm going to hand that to you in just a second. Do you have that there, Mr. Olson? Yes, I sure do. Could you scan through that for us? Okay, you have listened to all the recordings in this case? Yes. 100 hours? Yes. We've provided 5 hours here for the jury? Yes. Okay, do you recall if this is connected to your visit at the Esther cabins with Barney and Mr. Cox? Yes, it is. And okay, even though you can't recall the exact date, would that be fair? Yeah. We offer 2905 and the audio clip that goes with it. No objection to reversal. If we can't remember the date, why are we offering it? That's no foundation. Miss Hayden, no objection. Okay. It may be admitted. Scrocky, go ahead. Plaintiff's exhibit. They play the audio. By Mr. Scrocky. What was inside the cabin, Mr. Olson? Oh, was that inside the cabin, Mr. Olson? Yes, it was. Hand him 2307. Mr. Kurtner asked you some questions about Mr. Vernon and the list? Yes. And that he may or may not have been familiar with Schaefer's Cox's list? Yes. And this... Excuse me. And this is a conversation with you and Mr. Vernon with respect to the list? Yes, it is. Scrocky, offer 2307. Your Honor, I'm going to object unless they can lay a foundation as to when this conversation took place. Do you have the response to that, Mr. Olson? When did you recall when this conversation occurred? This was at Food Factory Restaurant. And approximately what time frame are we talking about? I don't remember the specific date, but the time we talked about when they went to Michael Anderson's to get the list or to try to track down Michael Anderson and get a copy of the list. Okay, so take a second, anchor your memory to that. Give us a time frame within a specific month. That would be in the month of February. So anchor yourself to that and try to find the first part or second part if you can. The last part, the second part, the last part of February. Okay, offer 2307. Ms. Hayden, Your Honor, we still object. He can't lay a foundation as to whether it's before or after the conversation that Mr. Kurtner asked about. The court, 2307 may be admitted. I don't have a copy of that either. 2307. Play the audio, video, Scrocky. Mr. Olson, with respect to the comment about a city map, what was that directed towards? Towards the addresses on the list. Mr. Olson, are you scanning through what we've marked as 48-T? Yeah. Or Exhibit 48, I guess. Scan through that for us if you could. Okay, there's a number of segments on that exhibit. Is that correct? Yes, there is. Do you recall Mr. Kurtner questioning you about a recording or meeting with the Vernons that was not recorded? Yes, I do. Is this reflective of that conversation? Yes, it would be. This is the one you were asked about? Yes, it is. Where was this meeting involving yourself and it looks like Mr. Vernon? Yes. It was in my truck. And Miss Vernon is present in some of the conversation as well? Yes. Grocky offer 48. Your Honor, I'm going to need a minute to read this. This was not in the government's exhibit list. And I've never seen it before. Oh, I'm stunned. I'd like to read through the transcript to see what it is. You have the right to read it before I rule on it. But can we, Your Honor? We had these transcripts have been available to counsel. This is for months. You're offering an exhibit in court. She has the right to look at the exhibit to see if it's admissible. I'm totally understand that, and I respect your ruling, but the comments about not seeing it before, they have been available. Maybe she didn't look. Could be. Miss Hayden, no objection, Your Honor. No objection, times 3, 48. Could we have the lights, Madam Clerk, Mr. Scrocky? Mr. Olson, with reference to Exhibit 48, a recorded conversation you mentioned was between you and the Vernons in your truck. Yes. Is this the same time frame that you were talking about, the transformers and the cell towers in this photo here, Exhibit 447? Yes, it was. So they were all, both of them in the truck when this conversation was occurring? Yes. And were these the respective targets you were talking about during that conversation? Yes. Well, the transformer was the further pole out there over on the left, but the cell tower is the one you circled, all right. And these are not the entire conversation, but snippets of that conversation. Scrocky, play the audio. Mr. Olson was discussing about Mike is the list. Play the audio. You asked some questions by You were asked some questions by Mr. Kurtner about Lonnie Vernon and his association with Mr. Cox after Mr. Cox moved out of his house, yes, and moved into Coleman Barney's house, yes. Did you observe a lot of interchange or exchange between Mr. Cox and Mr. Vernon before that fact? Nothing. Just your normal once or twice a week exchange, that I seen. So a lot of the conversations that occurred with Mr. Vernon and Mr. Cox was because he was living in his home, yes. As a fugitive, yes. And you were asked questions by probably all the lawyers, I guess, with respect to the 241 plan, yes. And you were tasked by, your response was you were tasked by Agent Sutherland to find out about it. Yes, I was. And when you heard about the information, what did you do with that? Do with what? Do with the information about the 241 or any other information about the 241? I would go back and tell Agent Sutherland. Was he interested in finding out who was on the list from a law enforcement perspective? Yes, he was. And is that why you pushed for it? Yes, it is. He was on almost daily that I was told to do was try to get a copy of that list. You were asked some questions about the uncertainty of the 241 plan. Do you recall those? Yes, I do. During that time, Mr. Cox and Mr. Barney and Mr. Vernon, were there things that would have occurred that would have triggered an immediate 241 activity? Schaefer's arrest could have. Other things? No, not that I recall off the top of my head. Okay, so Schaefer's arrest for one. Yes, that would have. And he was a fugitive, wasn't he? Yes, so his arrest could have happened at any time, yes. So you sat there and just went through a litany of default judgments, yes. With Mr. Dooley, yes. Okay, you owe a lot of people a lot of money, yes, I do. And there were those actions in terms of default judgments and such, where you owe those people money. Was that a good time in your life? No, it wasn't. Do you have anything to show for any of that? Not a thing. And you were running drugs for Hell's Angels, yes. On 2 occasions, yes. And your wife left you? Yes, she did. How's your relationship now? It's good, real good. How old are you now, Mr. Olson? 37 years old. Is one of the reasons you're there in the witness box because of the things you've done in your life? Yes, sir. You were asked some questions about Mr. Kurtner with respect to your relationship with Lonnie Vernon. Yes. You knew him before this investigation? I met him once or twice, yes. In the field of a logging job, something like that. It was a road construction job where he was driving a dump truck, or he was running a dozer, and Karen was driving a dump truck for a dirt working company and construction company. How far back was that? 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. The summer of 2005 or 6. Any contact between the two of you between the time frame 2005-6 and to the commissioning ceremony? No, I remember seeing him one time and that I noticed in Napa store in the Fairbanks, but we didn't talk. I just bumped into him. He didn't recognize me. I recognized him. I'm kind of working my way backwards. Okay, all right. So, Mr. Diverso, you asked some questions about, in essence, Mr. Cox being targeted by the government. Yes. Did you have any occasion to hear of any Mr. Cox's speech in Montana? Traverso object. No, I didn't. Not a one. Traverso objection, Your Honor. This is reopening. I mean, this is the court. Well, I'm sorry. Opening direct again. The last answer may stand. We'll see what the next question is. Mr. Traverso, okay. There was a lot of questions about the Broadway Road cache, dash, storage area, collection of weapons that you helped move. Yes. Do you recall Mr. Cox making any comments about getting items out of there prior to moving out of Alaska and how he described him? I remember him saying he wanted to bring a few goodies, I believe is what he said. I don't recall if that was the exact word he used, but it was something like goodies, something like that. You were asked a lot of questions about Traverso. I'm going to object to that, Your Honor. I have not had any recording regarding that. I'd like to know where that is coming from. I mean, this is on redirect. He said that he has recorded. The foundation has been presented, and that's everything that's been recorded. Fine. We played it. Well, the court will pull it up. Wait a minute. The objection's overruled. Okay. Would you like to go to Exhibit 2414, the last page of the exhibit, Mr. Olson? Okay, see where it is? There's some stash and some goodies there. Yes, I do. Why don't you read Mr. Cox? It says pick a few cherries, cherry picking out there and take that with me. Is that what you were referring to? Yes, it was. Oh, and then up it right above that too. Yeah, that's enough. Okay, were you asked some questions by Mr. Traverso with respect to grenades in this investigation? Who was the first person to initiate conversation about grenades? Schaefer Cox. Would that be the same hold true for 2 for 1? Yes, it would. Were you asked about the Super Bowl party meeting with Mr. Cox? Yes, and you offered M16s to him? I offered M16s. He went to the militia convention that morning. Did Mr. Cox seem to be interested in automatic weapons from you, Mr. Olson? No, he wasn't real interested in automatic weapons. Where did his interest lie? In grenades, explosives, C4. Mr. Diverso, you some questions about Gandhi and Rambo? Yes. Did you ever hear of Gandhi talking about killing women and children? No, I haven't. That's all I have on redirect. Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson. You may be excused. And that's the end of the file.